Every human being walks through life searching for meaning, a quiet wish to understand why we are here, what truly matters, and how to live with peace. The Buddha once said, "Mind is the root, karma is the path, and compassion is the light." These timeless words hold the essence of awakening. When we see clearly, we live gently. The old stories you are about to hear may seem simple, yet within their calm surface lies wisdom that has guided hearts across centuries. They are not just tales of monks and kings, but reflections of you and me, of choices, kindness, mistakes, and the courage to begin again. Welcome to Moonlight Temple, a space where teachings flow like water, soothing, reflective, and quietly alive. During these 3 peaceful hours, you will not be asked to study or memorize. You will be invited to listen to understand, understand to love, and love to let go. Each story is a small mirror, revealing parts of yourself that you may have forgotten, the gentle, the patient, the compassionate within. In the first part, we'll explore how planting good seeds brings peace of mind. Then, we'll look inward to see the true causes of suffering. Finally, we'll return to the heart of compassion, learning who we really are beneath all noise and fear. Let this time be your gentle pause. Breathe softly, settle in, and allow these stories to guide you home. If their light touches you, please support Moonlight Temple by sharing, subscribing, and spreading this calm to someone who may need it tonight. Chapter 1. Plant good seeds. Peace will bloom. Before peace appears on the outside, it must first take root within. This first chapter is a gentle reminder that every small act, every word, and every thought plants a seed in the soil of life. What we give, we eventually receive. What we hold in our hearts shapes the world around us. Through 6 simple stories, we'll see how kindness, honesty, and gratitude quietly build the foundation of lasting calm, where peace is not found, but grown. Story 1. The Old Woman and the Bean. Blessings arise from the heart, not from the amount. When we give with all our heart, the universe remembers. It was a quiet morning in an old village, resting between mountains and rivers. The air smelled faintly of smoke from cooking fires and the sweetness of wet soil after rain. Along the dusty road that led to the monastery, people were gathering with baskets of offerings, fruits, rice, flowers, coins, and gifts wrapped in clean cloth. The monks were coming for their daily alms round, and the villagers wanted to share what they could. Among them was an old woman, thin and stooped, her grey hair tied back with a frayed piece of cloth. Her clothes were worn and faded, patched so many times that the fabric had almost turned into stories itself. In her trembling hand, she held only one small bean. It was all she had left after days of hunger. She had thought about eating it that morning, but something inside whispered, "Maybe I can still give." The crowd around her was lively. Some people offered full bowls of rice, others golden coins or fruits fresh from their gardens. The air buzzed with movement and chatter. The old woman stood silently at the edge, watching the line of monks approach, orange robes glowing in the morning light like embers in the wind. When the senior monk stopped before her, she looked down at the bean resting in her palm. Shame rose for a moment, a tiny thing, so small it seemed almost foolish. But she remembered something she had once heard. The value of giving does not lie in the gift, but in the heart that gives. With both hands, she bowed and placed the single bean into the monk's bowl. Her gesture was small, Yet her heart poured everything she had into that moment, her love, her faith, her wish that others may eat, even when she could not. The monk looked at her gently and smiled. "May your heart be full," he said softly, blessing her with his gaze. The people nearby barely noticed what had happened. To them, it was just an old woman with nothing to give. But when the monks returned to the monastery, the senior monk placed that single bean at the center of the offering table. The younger monks asked why. He replied, "Because that one bean was given with a whole heart. Its fragrance is greater than any gold." That night, as the village grew quiet, something unusual happened. A soft rain began to fall, the kind of rain that makes the earth sing. The fields that had been dry for weeks soaked up the water greedily. By morning, the crops stood taller, their leaves gleaming with new life. The villagers called it a blessing. When they came to the old woman's hut to share their gratitude, they found her sitting by the door, smiling faintly. She said she had dreamed of the Buddha walking through her garden, placing a glowing bean into the ground. He said, she whispered, "What we give with love never disappears. It grows somewhere, in some form." Days passed, and word of the old woman's offering spread through the village. Some laughed softly at the simplicity of her act. Others began to wonder if perhaps that was the true meaning of generosity. A merchant, who had once boasted about his large donations, came to the temple and said, "I gave many coins, yet my heart felt empty. Why did her single bean move everyone?" The monk replied, "Because she gave without calculating. You gave from abundance, she gave from her hunger. Generosity is not measured in weight, but in surrender." There is a kind of peace that comes when we stop counting what we have and begin to see what we can share. In this story, the old woman's bean was a seed of awakening, not only for her, but for those who witnessed her simple courage. It reminded everyone that giving is not about wealth, but about freedom. When we give freely, we loosen the grip of fear, the fear of not having enough, of not being safe, of losing what we think defines us. The Buddha once taught that there are 3 kinds of generosity. The first is giving material things, food, shelter, help. The second is giving fearlessness, comforting others, standing beside them when they are afraid. The third is giving understanding, offering compassion, patience, or forgiveness. The old woman, with her one bean, gave all 3. Her act nourished others, dissolved her own fear, and awakened kindness in everyone who saw it. Imagine this: if you had only one small thing left, a piece of bread, a moment of time, a smile, would you still give it away? In truth, every act of kindness is like that bean. It might seem small to the world, but in the unseen soil of the heart, it becomes vast. Later that season, the villagers gathered for the harvest. The fields yielded more than they ever had before. The senior monk again mentioned the old woman's offering. "The rain was not a miracle," he said. "It was the echo of a heart that gave without condition." The people were silent. Some closed their eyes, feeling that truth sink in. They began to see that every generous act, even the smallest, ripples outward in ways we may never witness. And so, when the next morning came, the merchant who once mocked her left a bowl of rice at a stranger's doorstep. The young mother shared part of her bread with a hungry child. Even the children began to pick flowers and place them at the temple gate. None of them were thinking about blessings anymore. They were simply moved by the warmth of giving itself. The old woman's hut remained humble and quiet. She did not know that her story had traveled beyond the village, but she could feel something different, a lightness in her chest, a peace that had nothing to do with what she owned. She realized she had not lost anything by giving that bean. She had gained the joy of freedom. To give from the heart is to remember our shared humanity. When we offer with pure intention, we participate in the quiet rhythm of the universe, the endless exchange of care that keeps life alive. No act of love ever vanishes. It circles back, sometimes as rain on the crops, sometimes as comfort when we need it most. The next time you give, do it without the shadow of expectation. Let your giving be soft, natural, and sincere. Whether it's a coin, a word of kindness, or a moment of attention, offer it fully, not as a transaction, but as a celebration of being alive. Because generosity is not something we do, it's what we are when the heart opens wide. Reflection. Practice. Tonight, think of one thing you truly cherish, something small but meaningful. Offer it to someone who needs it more. It could be an object, a kind message, or simply your time. Do it quietly, without anyone knowing, and notice how it feels. When you give with your whole heart, you are planting invisible seeds. The universe never forgets those seeds, and one day, when you least expect it, they will bloom into peace. Story 2. The man who saved his milk for tomorrow. The thief of time is the word later. Goodness does not wait for perfection. It begins now. Long ago, in a small riverside village, there lived a young man known for his tidy house, neat clothes, and constant planning. He was not unkind, but he was always waiting for the right moment to begin anything good. When others offered food to travelers or helped the sick, he would smile and say, "I will do that too, when I have more money, when life feels easier, when things are just right." Each morning, he walked to the marketplace to sell milk from his 2 cows. The milk was fresh and sweet, and his business grew slowly. People liked him because he was polite, though they often said, "He's too careful. He wants life to be perfect before he acts." The young man would only laugh, not realizing how those small delays were shaping his life. One evening, after a long day, he carried a jar of milk back home. On the way, he met a hungry monk sitting beneath a banyan tree. The monk's robe was torn, and his face was pale from fasting. The young man stopped and felt a pull in his chest. "I should offer him this milk," he thought. But almost immediately another thought followed. "It's late, and I'm tired. I'll bring him some tomorrow when I have more to share." The monk smiled kindly as if he had read the man's thoughts. "Be careful," he said softly. "Tomorrow is the cleverest thief. It steals everything we mean to give today." But the young man only bowed quickly and hurried away, clutching the jar. That night, as he ate his dinner, he thought of the monk sitting under the dark sky with nothing. His heart stirred with a trace of guilt, yet he consoled himself, whispering, "Tomorrow, I'll bring 2 jars of milk instead of 1. He felt satisfied with the plan and went to bed. In the middle of the night, a sudden storm swept through the valley. Rain fell hard against the roof, and thunder rolled like drums. The next morning, when the young man stepped outside, the world had changed. The road was flooded, trees had fallen, and the banyan tree near the river had been struck by lightning. The monk was gone. The young man felt a hollow ache in his chest. He carried the jar of milk down the path, but no one was there to receive it. Days passed. The sun returned, the market reopened, but something inside him felt different, heavier. Each time, he poured milk into a customer's cup. He remembered the gentle face of the monk and those quiet words. Tomorrow is the thief of time. One afternoon, still haunted by the memory, the young man went to the monastery on the hill. He found another monk sweeping the courtyard and asked if he had known the traveler by the banyan tree. The monk nodded slowly and said, "Yes. He passed away that very night. But before he left, he smiled and said, 'There is a young man who will learn the beauty of today.'" The young man bowed his head and wept. He placed the jar of milk at the base of a small shrine and whispered, "I waited too long." That moment changed him. From that day forward, he stopped waiting for perfect conditions. When he saw a child crying, he comforted them. When a neighbor was sick, he brought food without delay. When a stray animal wandered near his house, he poured milk into a bowl and set it down gently, whispering, "For today, not tomorrow." He began to notice something subtle but powerful. Each time he acted with immediacy and sincerity, his heart felt lighter. There was a quiet joy in simple giving, a warmth that lingered long after the act itself. The Buddha once said that a person who hesitates to do good is like a farmer who waits for the wind to stop before sowing his seeds. The wind never truly stops, and so the seeds remain in the bag. The young man understood this deeply now. The world will never be perfectly calm. The time to plant goodness is always this moment. Over the years, he became known in the village not as the cautious planner, but as the man who acted with heart. People began to say, "He does not wait for tomorrow, he gives before the thought fades." His face grew peaceful, and his eyes, once filled with worry about enough, now reflected contentment. One evening, many years later, as he sat by the same river where he had once met the monk, he watched the sunlight turn gold on the water. The air was soft and warm. A traveler passed by, dusty and tired, and stopped near him. Without thinking, the man poured his cup of milk and offered it with a smile. "Drink," he said. "It's a good evening to be kind." The traveler bowed and drank gratefully. As the man looked at the fading light, he felt the deep peace that comes from a life lived awake to the present, to compassion, to the fleeting gift of now. This story is simple, yet it speaks to something all of us have felt, the quiet tendency to postpone what matters. We tell ourselves we'll apologize later, help later, love later, when we have more time, more energy, more courage. But life is a stream that does not stop flowing. The moments we delay are carried away, never to return. When we postpone a kind act, we lose not just the chance to help another, but also the chance to awaken our own heart. The act itself is small, but the awareness it brings is immense. Goodness, like the breath, belongs to this instant, not the next. It doesn't require wealth or perfection. It simply requires presence. The old monk was right. Tomorrow steals what the heart intends today. If you listen closely, this teaching hums quietly beneath the surface of every day. Do not wait for a better time to love. Do not wait for a quieter mind to be kind. Do not wait for certainty to forgive. Each act of goodness, however small, is a spark against the darkness of delay. The young man's life reminds us that true giving does not come from abundance, but from immediacy, from the courage to act before doubt intervenes. When kindness is delayed, its fragrance fades. When it is offered now, it becomes eternal. Reflection. Practice. Tonight, before you sleep, pause for a few breaths. Think of one small act of kindness you can do before the day ends. A message of gratitude, a word of comfort, a gift of presence. Do it now, not later. The future is uncertain, but this moment is alive and waiting for you. Every time you act from love without delay, you reclaim what the thief of time tries to steal, the pure, unrepeatable beauty of now. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Story 3: The Greedy Merchant and the 5 Great Gifts. To harm no one is the highest form of giving. When we live without causing pain, we are offering peace to the world. There once lived a wealthy merchant in a bustling town near the sea. His ships sailed to distant lands, bringing back silks, spices, and gold. His house stood higher than any other, with gates of carved wood and servants who moved like shadows. Yet despite his fortune, the man was known for his stinginess. He locked his storerooms each night, counting coins until his eyes grew sore. He did not share food with the poor or donate to temples. When beggars passed his door, he turned away. Even his family felt the chill of his guarded heart. To him, generosity seemed like a loss. Every coin given was a coin gone forever. The world is full of takers, he would say. If I give, I'll end up empty. But emptiness had already found him. His sleep was restless, his meals tasteless, and though his house overflowed with treasures, his days felt grey. One morning, a traveling monk arrived in town, serene, quiet, and unbothered by the noise of the market. People gathered to listen as he spoke about the 5 great gifts. 1. The gift of giving. 2. The gift of kind speech. 3. The gift of compassion. 4. The gift of joy in others' happiness. 5. And above all, the gift of not harming. The merchant, curious yet skeptical, came forward. I understand giving, he said, but how can not harming be called a gift? Doing nothing isn't the same as giving something. The monk smiled softly. You misunderstand, he said. Every day, we move through the world touching others' lives. When we refrain from harming, in thought, word, or action, we give them safety, peace, and trust. That is a gift greater than gold. The merchant frowned. But I'm a man of trade. I deal in things, not ideas. Then trade this, the monk replied gently. Trade your fear for kindness, and see what comes back. The merchant said nothing, but that night, the monk's words would not leave him. Later that week, while inspecting his storehouse, the merchant saw a servant accidentally drop a small jar of oil. In the past, he would have shouted or docked the man's pay, but something inside him hesitated. He remembered the monk's voice. To harm no one is the highest gift. He took a breath and said quietly, "Be careful next time." The servant froze in disbelief, expecting anger, but the merchant simply turned away. That tiny act, the choice not to harm, left a surprising feeling in his chest. It was not weakness, as he had feared. but relief. That night, he slept soundly for the first time in years. As the days went on, he began experimenting with kindness the way he once experimented with trade. When a beggar knocked at his gate, he gave a small piece of bread. When his wife asked for help with the household, he agreed instead of dismissing her. Each act was small, yet each felt like a drop of water cooling the fire of his constant anxiety. One morning, while walking through the market, he heard a child crying. The child had dropped a clay pot, and the shopkeeper was shouting at him. Without thinking, the merchant stepped in, bought the pot, and handed it to the boy with a smile. The crowd looked surprised. The merchant had never been known for mercy. The shopkeeper muttered, "Who are you, to spend your gold like that?" The merchant answered quietly, "I'm learning the price of peace." That evening, he visited the monastery where the traveling monk was teaching. "I've tried what you said," he confessed. "I gave food, spoke kindly, forgave mistakes, but still, I feel I've done so little. How can this compare to the grand offerings others make, the building of temples, the feeding of hundreds?" The monk poured him a cup of tea and said, "The greatest offering is not in the size of the act, but in the purity of the heart. There are 5 forms of giving, and the last is the most precious." He counted them on his fingers. 1. Giving of material things, food, money, shelter. 2. Giving of courage, helping others face their fear. 3. Giving of understanding, listening without judgment. 4. Giving of forgiveness, freeing yourself and others from resentment. 5. And finally, giving of harmlessness, living each day so that nothing in your path suffers because of you. The monk continued, "A man who gives but still harms is like one who fills a cup with honey while his hands drip with poison. True generosity is peace in action." The merchant bowed deeply. "Then how can I live this way?" "Begin where you are," said the monk. "Choose one precept, one promise, and hold it close for a single day. Keep your actions harmless, your speech gentle, your thoughts clear. See how the world responds." The next morning, the merchant decided to try. He chose the first precept, to refrain from taking what was not freely given. All day, he practiced honesty in every small thing. When he saw a fruit fall from a neighbor's tree, he placed it back instead of taking it. When a customer overpaid at his shop, he returned the extra coins. He noticed how light his body felt, how simple it was to breathe when he did not have to hide anything. By sunset, something miraculous had happened. His servants smiled more. His wife, seeing the change in him, sat beside him at dinner and spoke softly for the first time in years. The food tasted different, fuller, warmer, as if peace itself had flavored it. The next day, he chose another precept, to speak truthfully and kindly. He found it difficult at first. Words had always been his weapons in trade. But as he began to speak less and listen more, he realized how many wounds are made by careless speech. Every day, he selected one precept and lived it as best he could. The world around him shifted, not magically, but gently. His heart became lighter, his home quieter, and his wealth, though the same, seemed to serve him instead of enslaving him. One evening, many months later, the merchant returned to the monastery to find the traveling monk preparing to depart. He bowed and said, "I understand now. To give is not always to hand something away. Sometimes it is simply to stop causing harm." The monk smiled. "Yes," he said, To live harmlessly is to offer the world your peace. When you guard the peace within you, the whole world receives a share. As the monk walked down the dusty road, the merchant felt tears fill his eyes, not from sadness, but gratitude. For the first time in his life, he felt rich beyond measure. Years passed, and when the merchant eventually grew old, his wealth no longer defined him. People remembered him not for his ships or treasures, but for his calm kindness. Children greeted him in the streets. Travelers found shelter in his home. His life had become the living proof of what the monk had taught, that generosity without harm is the purest form of devotion. And when he passed away, the town built a small shrine near the harbor, not of gold, but of simple stone. On it were carved the monk's words, "To harm no one is the highest gift. When we live gently, we bless all beings." Reflection practice. Choose one precept, perhaps honesty, kind speech, or harmless action, and hold it in your awareness for a single day. Notice how each moment offers a choice: to harm or to heal, to take or to give peace. Every time you choose harmlessness, you make an offering, not to a temple, but to life itself. The world may not see it, but the heart always remembers. Story 4. The Monk with Sores and the 5 Kings of the Past. Every meeting happens for a reason. The threads of our lives weave through time, carrying debts of harm and seeds of grace. When we forgive, we end the circle of returning pain. In the quiet season after the rains, the monastery rested in golden stillness. The sound of cicadas filled the air, and the sunlight shimmered across the long rows of huts where the monks lived. Among them was an old monk whose body was covered with painful sores. His skin cracked and bled, and each movement sent waves of burning through his body. Yet, every morning before dawn, he rose to meditate, his breath steady and soft, his mind luminous with patience. The younger monks cared for him as best they could, washing his wounds, offering herbs, carrying water. But as the days passed, some began to feel uneasy. They whispered among themselves, wondering why someone who had lived such a disciplined and kind life was suffering so deeply. One of them finally asked their teacher, "Why does this elder suffer when he has done no wrong? Has he been abandoned by karma?" The teacher smiled gently. "Karma never abandons anyone," he said. "It only waits for the right moment to ripen. What you see as pain is often the last echo of an old story." The young monk frowned, confused. But if he is pure now, why must he still pay for the past? The teacher placed his palm over his heart. Because compassion grows from understanding. When one truly sees the link between past and present, between harm and healing, the heart becomes vast. This old monk's pain is not punishment. It is the end of a long journey. That evening, when the moon rose over the forest, the elder monk called the young novices to his hut. His voice was weak but calm. "Do you wonder about my sickness?" he asked softly. They nodded. He smiled. "Then listen carefully. Long ago, before this lifetime, I was not a monk. I was a ruler, one of 5 kings who shared a great kingdom. We were proud and strong, and we fought constantly for power. In one of those wars, I ordered my men to burn a rival's palace. Inside that palace lived a wise man who had done no harm, only offered counsel to his people. He escaped the fire but suffered terrible burns and lived the rest of his life in pain. I never saw him again, until this life." The young monks listened in silence, their eyes wide in the flickering light of the oil lamp. "In this body," the elder continued, That man's pain has returned, not as revenge, but as remembrance. Every sore on my skin reminds me of the harm I once caused. But in this lifetime, I have chosen not to run from it. I use this pain as a mirror to see how suffering feels in the body and how compassion can be born from it. It is the last payment of an old debt, and I am grateful it ends here. A hush filled the room. Outside, the wind stirred the trees like a sigh from the earth. The next morning, as the elder monk walked slowly to the meditation hall, his body trembling with effort, he saw a stranger waiting near the gate, a traveler with a scar on his arm and eyes filled with sadness. The man bowed deeply. "Venerable one," he said, "I don't know why I was drawn here. Last night, I dreamed of fire and a face I could not forget. When I woke, I felt a pull to come to this monastery." The elder looked at him for a long moment, and a soft smile touched his lips. "Perhaps the circle has found its end," he whispered. They sat together beneath a tree. The traveler spoke of his restless life, how anger followed him like a shadow, how every joy slipped away too soon. The monk listened, his silence warm and steady. At last, the traveler asked, "Why do I always meet pain in every friendship, every love? I try to live well, but life keeps burning me." The elder replied, "Because somewhere in your heart, you still carry the ashes of old fires. We meet again and again, across lifetimes, to finish what was left undone, to learn mercy where once we planted harm. You and I have known each other before. Today we meet not to hurt, but to forgive." The traveler felt tears rise without knowing why. He bowed his head, and the monk placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "May this meeting heal what time could not," he said. When the traveler left, a stillness settled over the monastery. That night, the elder monk's breath grew thin. The younger monks gathered beside him. He whispered, "Remember, every face you meet is part of a long story. Sometimes it is love returning. Sometimes it is pain asking to be released. Do not cling to either, just meet them with kindness." As dawn colored the sky, he took his final breath, peaceful and unafraid. The monks later said that when his body was prepared for cremation, the sores had vanished, leaving his skin smooth as if washed by light. Years later, one of the young monks who had cared for him became a teacher himself. He often told the story of the monk with sores and the 5 kings. "He showed us," the teacher would say, "that karma is not a punishment from the heavens, but a lesson from the heart. What we have done returns, not to hurt us, but to teach us how to stop hurting others." This story, though ancient, speaks to a truth we can all feel. We all carry echoes of things we've said, choices we regret, people we've harmed or been harmed by. Life brings those echoes back, sometimes in the faces of strangers, sometimes in the people closest to us. When we meet anger, betrayal, or pain, it may not be the first meeting of our souls. It may be the moment when the past knocks gently, asking to be released. We cannot rewrite what has already been lived, but we can choose how the story ends. Each act of forgiveness breaks a link in the chain of repetition. Each time we meet hurt with understanding instead of resentment, we set both ourselves and the other free. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is remembering without bitterness. It is the quiet decision to no longer carry the weight that does not belong to this moment. When we forgive, we say to life, "I understand now. Let it rest." Reflection. Practice. Tonight, bring to mind one person who has caused you pain. Instead of revisiting the story, simply see their face and breathe. Imagine that behind their actions lies their own unhealed sorrow, something they, too, once suffered. Whisper silently, "May you find peace. May we both be free from this pain." Forgiveness does not mean agreeing with what was done. It means ending the cycle that binds you to it. Just as the monk's suffering dissolved when he met his old debt with compassion, your heart too can heal when you stop resisting and start releasing. Every meeting, even the painful ones, carries a reason. Some to teach us love, some to remind us to let go. All of them, in their quiet way, lead us back to peace. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Story 5. The Singer Monk and the Debt of 3,000 Gold Coins. Every debt must one day be repaid, no matter how small. The seeds we plant today will blossom across lifetimes. There was once a monk known for his beautiful voice. When he chanted, even the leaves on the trees seemed to pause to listen. His voice carried across valleys and rivers, soft yet powerful, like the wind moving through bamboo. People called him the Singer Monk. He traveled from village to village, spreading peace through song. He accepted no money, only food for the day. Wherever he went, hearts softened, tears fell, and those who had been cruel found themselves quiet and humble. His singing was not meant to impress, it was his way of sharing compassion. One evening, after a long day of walking, the monk stopped at a small village by the river. There he met a wealthy merchant who owned boats, warehouses, and many servants. The merchant was proud of his fortune, yet inside he was always restless. He had built walls of gold but found no peace behind them. When he heard of the Singer Monk's arrival, he sent servants to invite him to perform at his house. "I will pay him 3,000 gold coins," he said. "A voice like that deserves a royal reward." That night, the monk sang. His voice was calm and full of devotion, rising and falling like waves on a quiet sea. The sound filled every corner of the merchant's house, touching something ancient in the listeners' hearts. When the song ended, silence hung in the air. The merchant felt tears on his face, a feeling he had not known since childhood. He bowed deeply. "Venerable sir," he said, "you have given me more than I can repay. Please accept this gift of 3,000 gold coins." The monk smiled and shook his head. "I accept food, not gold. My song was an offering, not a trade." But the merchant insisted, "Please take it. I owe you a debt for the peace you have brought me." The monk looked at him kindly. "If you call it a debt, then one day it will return. Every giving creates a link, every refusal too. Be mindful of what you bind." Still, to honor the merchant's sincerity, the monk finally accepted the coins, not for himself, but to build a small shelter for travelers near the forest path. He prayed that the gift would serve others long after he was gone. Then he departed silently before dawn. Many years later, the merchant's wealth began to fade. His ships sank in storms, his warehouses burned, and illness took his family one by one. When his body grew weak, he wandered away from the ruined town, searching for somewhere peaceful to rest before death. He came upon the small forest shelter the monk had built. It was quiet and simple, with a roof of leaves and a clay bowl at the entrance. Inside, a young monk was sweeping the floor. The merchant, now thin and frail, bowed and asked for water. The young monk offered him a drink and said, "This place was founded long ago by a singing monk. Travelers stop here to rest and pray. You may stay as long as you wish." The merchant felt a pang in his heart. He remembered the night of the song, the 3,000 coins, and the words about debts and returns. He wept, realizing how much time had passed and how little peace he had gained from all his wealth. As the days went by, his body grew weaker, but something inside began to change. He stopped cursing his losses and started to feel gratitude for the shelter that now protected him. Every morning, he helped the young monk sweep the yard, and every evening, he sat quietly listening to the wind move through the trees, as if singer monk's voice still lingered there. One night, before he fell asleep, he whispered into the dark, "I owe a debt to the one who gave me peace. May I repay it in whatever life comes next." Centuries turned, as all things do. Lives ended and began again, names forgotten, places changed. But karma never forgets what the heart once promised. In another age, another land, a poor musician was born. He had no teacher, yet his songs carried a rare sweetness, as if drawn from some deep memory. People would give him coins, but he always gave most of them away to others in need. He often said, "I don't sing for gold. I sing because somewhere, long ago, someone shared a song that set me free." One day, while resting in a monastery garden, he met an elderly monk who was blind. The monk smiled when he heard the young man's voice and said softly, "I know that sound. It is the echo of an old kindness repaid." When the musician looked puzzled, the monk added, "In a life, long past, you were a wealthy man who gave 3,000 gold coins to a singer who refused your payment. That act of generosity, though mixed with pride, planted a seed. Now, in this life, you give freely what you once tried to own. The debt has turned into blessing." The musician bowed his head in wonder. The monk continued, "Remember, every gift creates a circle. The heart that gives will one day receive, not from the same hands, but from the same universe." This story reminds us that every action is a thread in the vast web of cause and effect. We may forget what we owe or what we've done, but the universe keeps perfect balance. A kind word, a selfish deed, a broken promise, all find their way back, not as punishment, but as reflection. Karma is not a judge, it is a teacher. It returns what we give so that we may understand what we have created. When kindness returns, it feels like grace. When pain returns, it simply asks to be understood and corrected. The merchant and the monk's story teaches that debts are not measured in money alone. We owe others for love, forgiveness, and even lessons that hurt us. Every bond, pure or painful, seeks closure through understanding. To repay a debt is to act with awareness, to finish what was left undone, to restore harmony where imbalance once lived. Sometimes, repayment is simple: a word of apology, an act of kindness, a quiet prayer for someone we once harmed. Sometimes, it is simply gratitude for what was once received. When we awaken to this truth, the world begins to look different. We see every encounter as a continuation, not an accident. The person who tests your patience may once have suffered because of you. The friend who helps you may be returning a kindness you forgot. Every connection, visible or invisible, is part of the sacred balance that guides our souls. Reflection practice. Tonight, sit quietly and think of one debt in your life, something you still owe in words, gratitude, or healing. Write it down. Then ask yourself, how can I begin to repay this with awareness? It could be an apology to someone you hurt, a letter of thanks to someone who helped you, or a promise to stop a harmful habit. It does not need to be grand. Even one sincere act can close a circle that has been waiting for lifetimes. The seeds you plant today, in honesty, compassion, and care, will bloom long after you are gone. The universe always remembers, but it also always forgives when we begin again with love. Story 6. The Fear of the Serpent. The snake outside may frighten us, but the snake within, the restless, clinging mind, is far more dangerous. This body is only made of earth, water, fire, and air. To see it clearly is to live without fear. Once, in a quiet forest monastery, there lived a young monk named Ananda. He had taken vows with deep sincerity, but his mind was still fragile, easily shaken by sounds and shadows. The monastery stood near a dense jungle where snakes often slithered among the roots and stones. The older monks had long since learned to coexist with them, but Ananda's fear was strong. Each night, he lay awake listening to the soft rustle of leaves, the faint hiss of unseen creatures. Every creak of the floor made him tighten his body, imagining sharp fangs in the dark. He told himself he was brave, yet his heart thudded like a drum whenever he saw even a coiled vine. One evening, after meditation, he went to fetch water from the well. The air was heavy with mist, and the forest hummed with the cries of night birds. As he bent to lower his bucket, something moved beside the stone wall, a long, dark shape gliding silently. The young monk froze. Moonlight revealed scales glimmering faintly. A serpent. His breath caught. He wanted to run, but his body refused to move. His mind screamed, "I will die here." He closed his eyes, trembling, waiting for pain, but none came. When he opened them again, the serpent had vanished. Only the shadow of a branch swayed gently on the ground. His knees gave way. The bucket spilled. He stumbled back to his hut, heart pounding. That night, he could not meditate. Every time he tried to breathe calmly, the image of the serpent returned, its imagined eyes, its silent power. The next morning, his teacher, an elderly monk named Mahakassapa, noticed the unrest in his face. "What troubles you, Ananda?" "I saw a serpent near the well," he said, voice shaking. "I cannot stop thinking of it. Every time I close my eyes, I feel its presence." The teacher smiled softly. "Did it harm you?" "No." "Then why do you suffer from what never touched you?" Ananda lowered his head, embarrassed. "Because I was afraid. Afraid of the serpent," the old monk said, "or of the thought of the serpent." Ananda hesitated. "I don't know." "Then let us find out," said the teacher. That evening, as the forest glowed with the colors of sunset, the teacher led Ananda back to the well. "Sit here," he said. "Close your eyes and breathe. When fear arises, don't push it away. Look at it. Where does it live? In your body, in your breath, in your mind." Ananda obeyed. The air was cool. Crickets sang. He could feel his heart still racing, but he tried to stay with each breath. "Now," said the teacher, "see the body as it is. This flesh, this bone, this pulse, all are borrowed from the earth. Earth becomes bone, water becomes blood, fire becomes warmth, air becomes breath. Nothing here belongs to you. So what is there to protect?" The young monk listened, letting the words settle like rain. His breathing slowed. The teacher continued, "The serpent, too, is made of earth, water, fire, and air. The same elements flow through both of you. If you see clearly, you will know there is no you to be harmed and no snake to do the harming. There are only the elements dancing with themselves." Ananda opened his eyes. The world seemed softer. The forest was no longer a threat, it was simply alive. He realized the serpent's body and his own body were built from the same materials, rising and falling in time, shaped by nature, dissolved by nature. The teacher said, "Fear comes when the mind clings to the body as me. The moment you see the body as part of the earth, fear begins to fade. Fear is not in the snake, it is in the mind that believes it owns something fragile." Days passed. Ananda continued to practice, sitting by the well each evening. Sometimes he still felt the tremor of fear, but now he examined it instead of fleeing. He noticed how it began as a tightening in his belly, a quickening of breath, a surge of heat. Then, when observed without judgment, it slowly melted away. One night, as he sat in deep meditation, he felt movement beside him again. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the same serpent gliding toward him. His heart skipped, but he remained still, breathing softly. The creature paused beside his knee, coiled briefly, then slipped past him into the darkness. Something in him broke open, not from terror, but from understanding. The fear that had haunted him dissolved like mist. He realized the serpent had never been his enemy. The true serpent was inside, the constant whisper of I, me, mine, coiling around every moment of life. He bowed his head to the ground, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude to the creature that had unknowingly taught him freedom. Later, he went to his teacher. "Master," he said, "the snake returned last night, but I felt no fear." The old monk smiled. "Good. Then you have seen the truth. The snake outside may bite, but the snake of the mind bites endlessly. You have disarmed the greater one." Ananda bowed deeply. "But Master," he said, "will fear ever disappear completely?" The teacher chuckled softly. "Fear disappears when the one who fears disappears. As long as you think this body is me, fear will visit from time to time. But each visit is a reminder to look deeper, to breathe, to see the four elements returning to the four elements. That is all." Years later, when Ananda himself became a teacher, he would tell his students this story. Some listened as if it were about courage, others saw it as a lesson on impermanence. But for him, it was about intimacy, the deep knowing that we are not separate from what we fear. He would say, if you want to be free from fear, study what you call yourself. The moment you see the body as earth, water, fire, and air in motion, fear loses its ground. You will realize you are not standing against life. You are life itself, changing shape. This story is not just about a monk or a serpent. It is about all of us, our fears, our attachments, and the way we mistake the temporary for the eternal. We spend so much of our lives protecting what is already passing away. We fear death because we think the body is who we are. But the body is a guest house, not the owner. It comes, stays for a while, and goes. What remains is the awareness that watches, the clear space in which all things appear and fade. When we understand this, even the greatest fears of illness, aging, death soften into compassion. We stop fighting what is natural and start breathing with it. Reflection. Practice. Sit quietly and breathe. Notice how the breath enters and leaves the body. Feel the rise and fall of the chest, the movement of air, the warmth of life itself. Whisper softly to yourself, "This body is not me. It is earth, water, fire, and air. It changes, and I am the witness." Then imagine every fear you hold, fear of loss, of sickness, of endings, and see them as passing clouds in a vast sky. Watch them drift without trying to control them. The next time you feel fear rise within you, pause and breathe deeply. Ask yourself, where is the real snake, outside or inside? Each breath will remind you, nothing truly belongs to you, and nothing can truly be taken away. When you see that, fear has no place to hide. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Chapter 2. Seeing ourselves clearly, finding the way out of suffering. To understand suffering, we must first look inward. This chapter invites you to pause and see how pain, choice, and awareness are intertwined. Life does not punish, it mirrors the seeds we plant. Through 7 stories of kings, monks, and ordinary people, we'll explore how faith becomes wisdom, how mistakes can awaken compassion, and how freedom begins the moment we take responsibility for our own path. Story 7. The king who gave his body to save his people. To give is to be free. Whoever dares to let go gains everything that truly matters. Long ago, there was a kingdom nestled between green mountains and a great river. The land was fertile, and its people were kind. At the heart of this kingdom ruled a young king, wise, gentle, and deeply loved. He was not born into royalty by ambition, but into service by destiny. His teachers had taught him from childhood that a ruler's duty was not to possess his people, but to protect them. Yet, despite his wealth and power, he often felt an unease in his heart, a question that lingered like wind through an empty hall. What is true freedom? One year, a severe drought struck the land. The river, that had always nourished the fields, shrank into a thin stream. Crops withered, cattle died, and people grew weak with hunger. The king emptied the royal granaries and sent food to every village, but the suffering continued. The royal advisors pleaded with him to close the gates and preserve what was left for the palace. If the people die, they said, the kingdom can be rebuilt, but if the royal bloodline perishes, all will be lost. The king looked at them with sadness. A kingdom without compassion, he said softly, is already lost. As the days passed, The drought deepened. Priests offered prayers. Rituals were performed, but the sky remained silent. Then, one night, as the king meditated alone in his garden, a vision appeared before him, a radiant being cloaked in golden light. "Your people's suffering," the being said, "comes not from the sky but from karma long past. The only offering that can restore balance is one born from pure compassion." The king bowed his head. "What must be given?" The being replied, "Your body, freely and without regret. If given with sincerity, rain will return and the people will live." Then the vision faded like smoke in wind. The king sat in stillness for a long time. He thought of his people, of the children who cried for food, of the farmers who worked the parched soil with trembling hands. Fear rose for a moment, the natural fear of losing the body, but beneath it came a deeper peace. "If my life can end their suffering," he thought, "then what greater gift could I give?" The next morning, he summoned his ministers and spoke with calm certainty. "I will offer my body for the sake of all beings," he said. "Do not weep. What is mine was never truly mine. A king's life has meaning only when it eases the lives of others." The court fell silent. Some cried out in grief. Others called him mad, but none could move his resolve. He climbed the mountain that overlooked the kingdom, carrying no sword, no crown, only a prayer on his lips. When he reached the highest cliff, he stood beneath a cloudless sky and whispered, "May this body become rain. May this life become peace." Then he stepped forward into the abyss below. The wind rose. The moment his body disappeared into the valley, dark clouds gathered from every direction. Lightning cracked, thunder rolled, and rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy, filling the rivers and lakes, reviving the thirsty earth. The people danced and wept with joy, never knowing what had been given for their salvation. Days later, when the floods settled, a traveler found the king's body not broken, but lying peacefully among wildflowers. A gentle smile touched his face, and his hands were folded as if in prayer. The traveler, sensing something sacred, built a small cairn of stones beside him and whispered, "May your gift never be forgotten." Over the years, the story of the king who gave his body spread across the land. Some called him a saint, others doubted the tale, saying no one could love so selflessly. Yet in the hearts of the villagers, gratitude lived on. They built a shrine at the base of the mountain, and every year during the season of rain, they placed offerings of water lilies and whispered his name, not as a ruler, but as the one who loved without measure. Generations later, a monk passed through that same kingdom. He sat by the shrine and meditated, feeling the quiet power that lingered there. When a young boy approached and asked, "Why would someone give up his life like that?" the monk smiled gently. "The king did not lose his life," he said. "He returned it to the river of existence. What he let go was not his body, but his attachment to it. That is why he was free." The boy frowned, trying to understand. "But isn't it frightening to give up everything?" The monk replied, "Only if you believe everything is yours. When you realize that nothing can truly be owned, not your body, your name, or your treasures, then giving is no longer loss. It becomes joy." He placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "The rain that falls today is the same rain that fell on the king's body long ago. It is life returning to itself." The story carries a simple truth. We suffer not because we lack, but because we cling. The more we try to possess our wealth, our image, even our beliefs, the more we fear losing them. Yet the act of letting go, whether of riches, pride, or control, reveals a freedom nothing can threaten. The Buddha once taught that generosity is not about giving things, but about releasing the tight fist of self. When the hand opens, peace flows naturally. When the heart opens, the world breathes easier. You may never be asked to give your body as the king did, but each day offers smaller versions of his choice, moments to release something for the sake of peace, to forgive instead of argue, to listen instead of defend, to let go of a profit, a comfort, or a win, so that harmony may live. Freedom is not found by adding more to life, but by daring to subtract, by removing what clings, what fears, what insists. This is mine. One evening, as the monk who told the story prepared to leave the shrine, he looked toward the mountain and whispered, "The king still reigns, not in the palace, but in every heart that knows how to give." And perhaps, if we listen closely, we can feel that same rain falling within us, the quiet rhythm of release, washing away the dust of possession. Reflection practice. Tonight, think of one small thing you are holding too tightly. A desire, an argument, a need to be right, a material comfort, or a private worry. Ask yourself gently, can I let this go, even for a moment? Then, with a deep breath, imagine placing it down, like setting a heavy stone beside the path. Feel how light your chest becomes when the weight leaves. Letting go is not losing, it is returning. The more you release, the more space, love, and freedom can fill. Like the rain that fell from the king's sacrifice, your own act of release may nourish countless lives, beginning with your own. Story 8. The Merchant's Son and the Man of False Miracles. True faith is born from wisdom, not from blind belief. When you hear something that seems extraordinary, ask gently, does it lead the heart toward kindness? In a bustling city by the river, there lived a wealthy merchant whose son, Aaron, was known for his gentle heart but restless mind. He had grown up surrounded by comfort, silk clothes, music, and servants who bowed when he passed, yet he often felt an emptiness he couldn't name. There must be something more, he would say to himself while gazing across the water at the distant mountains. One day, a stranger arrived in the city. He was tall and thin, dressed in rough robes, and spoke with mysterious confidence. He claimed he had traveled from sacred lands and learned secret powers. Wherever he went, he drew crowds with promises of miracles. He said he could turn stones into gold, cure any illness, and reveal hidden truths of the universe. People began calling him the Enlightened One. Aaron heard of this man and, driven by curiosity, went to see him. The crowd around the stranger was large. He spoke loudly, using words that glittered like jewels. "Believe in me," he said, "and you will be free from suffering. Doubt me, and you will remain trapped in your ignorance." Aaron felt something stir in him, excitement mixed with unease. Still, he bowed and asked, "How can I find peace?" The man looked into his eyes and said, "Bring me 10 gold coins as an offering, and I shall grant you a blessing that will change your destiny." Aaron hesitated. 10 coins meant little to him, but the demand made him uneasy. Yet, everyone around was nodding in admiration, so he silenced his doubt and handed the gold over. The man placed a hand on his head, muttered strange words, and told him, "You are now awakened." The crowd cheered, but as Aaron walked home, a quiet emptiness followed him, heavier than before. He felt no wiser, no lighter, only confused. That night, he dreamt of standing before a mirror that showed no reflection. The next morning, as he walked through the marketplace, 𝐿 saw an old monk sitting beneath a banyan tree, offering water to passers-by. Unlike the false teacher, the monk spoke little. People stopped, drank, bowed, and left quietly with calm faces. 𝐿 approached him and said, "Venerable One, last night I met a man who claimed to perform miracles. He said he could free me from suffering, but I still feel lost. How do I know who speaks the truth?" The monk smiled. "When someone claims to hold light, look at their shadow. Does it fall long with pride or short with humility?" 𝐿 frowned. But he spoke of great wisdom. He said he could grant awakening. "Awakening cannot be sold," said the monk softly. "It blooms when understanding replaces illusion. A man may speak of heaven while his heart clings to gold. That is not truth, only theater." The young man sat down beside him. "Then how can I know what is real?" The monk dipped his fingers into the bowl of water and let the drops fall back in. "Real teaching," he said, "is like this water, clear, cool, and simple. It refreshes the heart without demanding payment. If a teaching makes you afraid, proud, or dependent, it is not truth. Truth asks for no worship. It invites understanding." 𝐿 bowed deeply. "But why do so many believe what is false?" The monk looked up at the sky. "Because illusion often speaks louder than truth. It flatters the ego. People would rather be promised power than be asked to let go of greed." That evening, 𝐿 returned to the place where the false teacher preached. He listened quietly from the crowd. The man was again demanding offerings and promising miracles. His words sounded grand, but now 𝐿 could hear the hollow ring beneath them. When the speech ended, 𝐿 stepped forward and asked calmly, "Teacher, if you are truly awakened, why do you need gold?" The crowd fell silent. The man glared at him. "Do not question me, boy. Doubt is the enemy of faith." 𝐿 smiled gently. "Then my faith must be weak because I wish to see clearly. Tell me, what is the use of your power if it does not lead to compassion?" The teacher's face tightened. "You dare insult the enlightened." "I dare only to ask," said 𝐿. "If truth is strong, it does not fear questions." The crowd began whispering. The false teacher shouted and stormed away, leaving his followers confused. 𝐿 turned to them and said, "Faith is not obedience. It is the courage to see." Word of the incident spread quickly through the city. Some mocked 𝐿 for his boldness. Others admired him for speaking truth. When he visited the old monk again, he told him what had happened. The monk nodded and said, "You have learned the first step of wisdom, to question without anger. Blind belief binds the mind, but gentle inquiry sets it free." 𝐿 asked, "But is doubt always good?" "Doubt," said the monk, "is like fire. In ignorance, it burns. In understanding, it illuminates. Use it not to destroy faith, but to refine it." In time, 𝐿 became known for his clarity and kindness. People came to him with their worries, and he would listen patiently before asking one question. "Does what you believe make you more loving or more fearful?" Those who came to argue left silent, and those who came to seek peace found it. Years later, when the old monk passed away, 𝐿 built a small shelter near the same banyan tree. On its door he carved a few words. "Truth does not need miracles. It only needs hearts willing to see." He spent the rest of his life teaching what he had learned, not through sermons or promises, but by example. When people brought him gifts, he used them to feed the poor. When they called him a wise man, he said, "Wisdom begins when we stop chasing extraordinary powers and start living ordinary kindness." This story reminds us that the line between faith and folly is drawn by awareness. It is not wrong to believe, but belief without understanding can easily become a cage. True faith is not blind. It is open-eyed. It questions, listens, and grows. The Buddha once said, "Do not believe simply because others speak it. Do not believe even because I have spoken it. Test it against your own experience. If it leads to peace and compassion, then it is truth." In a world filled with voices, some loud, some wise, we are called to listen not only with our ears, but with our hearts. When someone promises quick salvation or easy answers, pause and ask, "Does this teaching help me love more?" If it does, follow it. If it feeds pride or fear, let it go. Reflection, practice. Tonight, think of something you've been told to believe, a story, a rule, an idea about yourself or the world. Sit quietly and ask, is it true? Does it lead me toward kindness or away from it? Truth does not hide when questioned. It deepens. When we learn to balance faith with wisdom, belief becomes a light that guides, not blinds. And in that gentle clarity, we find the kind of peace that no false miracle can ever offer. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required. Just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Story 9. The Beggar and the Prince of Wisdom. The Buddha is present in every being. To honor all lives equally is the truest form of reverence. Once, in the kingdom of Kala, there lived a young prince named 𝐿. He was strong, clever, and deeply curious about the nature of goodness. Though raised in luxury, his heart was not untouched by the world's suffering. From the palace windows, he often watched peasants working under the hot sun and beggars sitting at the city gates. He would sometimes wonder, why does fortune fall unevenly upon us? What makes one life precious and another forgotten? Despite these thoughts, a quiet arrogance still clung to him, the invisible kind that grows in those who have never truly gone without. He was kind in speech, but inwardly proud of his wisdom and virtue. "I understand compassion," he told himself. "I give to the poor. I pray to the Buddha. Surely that is enough." One morning, the royal astrologer came to the king with strange news. "Your Majesty," he said, "a great teacher will soon enter this land disguised in humble form. Whoever recognizes him will gain a blessing that surpasses all riches." The king ordered that every traveler, monk, and wanderer be treated with respect, just in case. Yet, as the days passed, no one extraordinary appeared. Only the usual procession of weary pilgrims and dusty beggars. One afternoon, as the prince was returning from a hunting trip, he saw a ragged man sitting beneath a banyan tree by the roadside. The man's clothes were torn, his hair tangled, his face lined with years of hardship. In his hand, he held a wooden bowl filled with a few grains of rice. As the prince approached, the beggar looked up and smiled. His eyes were bright, too bright for someone so poor. "Young lord," he said softly, "could you spare a moment to share a meal with me?" The prince frowned slightly. "You ask a king's son to eat with a beggar?" The man nodded. "Yes. The rice tastes the same to every tongue." The prince hesitated, glancing at the guards beside him. They waited, unsure whether to laugh or scold. "I have no time for foolishness," 𝐂𝐿 said, turning his horse. But before he could leave, the beggar spoke again, his voice calm, almost musical. "Tell me, prince," he asked, "if the Buddha came to you dressed in rags, would you recognize him?" The words pierced through the prince's pride like a whisper of thunder. He stopped. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Someone hungry," said the man simply, "and someone who sees your hunger too." Confused, the prince dismounted and sat beside him. For a moment, they shared silence, the beggar eating slowly, the prince watching with unease. When the man finished, he handed the bowl to 𝐂𝐿 and said, "Now you eat." 𝐂𝐿 hesitated, but, moved by something he couldn't explain, took a grain of rice and placed it in his mouth. It was plain and dry, yet as he swallowed, he felt an odd stillness settle over him, as if the noise of his mind had paused. The beggar smiled. "You have tasted more than rice today. You have tasted equality." That night, the prince could not sleep. The beggar's words echoed in his mind. If the Buddha came in rags. The next morning, he ordered his guards to find the man, but no trace remained, only the wooden bowl by the banyan tree. Disturbed yet inspired, the prince rode to the monastery outside the city and asked the abbot, "Venerable sir, can a Buddha truly appear as a beggar?" The abbot smiled. "A Buddha can appear in any form, a king, a child, even an enemy. The wise do not see robes or crowns, they see the heart." "But why would enlightenment hide behind rags?" asked the prince. "To test whether compassion in us is genuine," the abbot said. "Most people worship the idea of holiness but reject its humble face. They pray to images of light but turn away from the light that wears dirt." The prince bowed deeply. "Then I have failed the test," the abbot replied. "Failure seen clearly is the beginning of awakening." Years passed. The prince became king after his father's death. Remembering the lesson, he ruled with gentleness, welcoming all who came to his gates, nobles and beggars alike. He built shelters for travelers, hospitals for the sick, and schools for children who could not afford books. Yet still, he longed to meet the mysterious beggar again. One stormy night, as he was meditating in the palace hall, the doors creaked open. A servant rushed in, saying, "Your Majesty, an old beggar seeks shelter from the rain." "Bring him to me," said the king. When the man entered, soaked and shivering, the king immediately recognized those same bright eyes, though years had changed the face around them. The king fell to his knees. "Master," he whispered, "I have searched for you since that day." The beggar smiled gently. "And you have found me, not by searching, but by serving." The king's eyes filled with tears. "Tell me, who are you truly?" The beggar's form shimmered faintly, as if lit from within. "I am no one and everyone," he said. "I am the mirror you avoided once, now seen clearly. The Buddha lives not in heaven or statues, but in every being you meet, especially the ones you find hardest to love." Then, before the king could speak again, The beggar's body dissolved into light and vanished like mist. The next morning, the rain had stopped. The king walked through the city streets, bowing to farmers, merchants, and even the poorest workers. When he looked surprised, he said simply, "I bow not to your wealth, but to the Buddha within you." From that day forward, the kingdom of 𝐾𝐿 became known as the land of the equal heart. People said the ruler there saw no high or low, only faces of the same divine light. This story reminds us that reverence is not reserved for temples or saints. The sacred hides in the ordinary, in a stranger's eyes, in a beggar's hunger, in the patience of a parent, in the forgiveness of a friend. When we separate people into worthy and unworthy, we divide the very wholeness of life. To see all beings as carriers of the same light is to live in harmony with truth itself. The Buddha taught that every mind, however clouded, carries the seed of awakening. When you meet someone difficult or unpleasant, remember, they too are walking through their own suffering toward the same freedom you seek. Compassion begins when we stop asking, "Who deserves my kindness?" and start realizing, kindness is what makes me human. Reflection practice. Today, notice someone you usually ignore or avoid, perhaps a stranger on the street, a colleague you dislike, or someone who irritates you. For a moment, imagine that behind their eyes lies the same awareness that breathes within you. Smile, even if just in your heart. That smile, small as it seems, is an act of awakening. It says to the universe, "I recognize you." When we learn to bow to the divine in others, we discover it has always been quietly shining within ourselves. Story 10. The Dead Ox and the True Meaning of Offerings. Do not waste tears on what is gone. The greatest gift to those who have passed is kindness done for the living. In a small village beside the river, there lived a humble farmer named Suri. He was quiet and honest, working the same patch of land that his ancestors had tended for generations. His fields were small, but his heart was wide. He treated his animals with care and shared what he could with neighbors who had less. Of all his companions, he loved his old ox most. The ox had worked beside him for 15 years, pulling the plow through dry seasons, carrying bundles of rice through the monsoon. When Suri was tired, he would rest his hand on the animal's warm flank, whispering gratitude. "You and I," he often said, "we live by the same earth." One morning, after a long night of thunder and heavy rain, Suri found his ox lying motionless beneath a tree. Its eyes were closed, its breath still. He knelt beside it, stroking its coarse hair, and tears filled his eyes. "My friend," he whispered, "you have given your whole life for mine." The news spread quickly through the village. Neighbors came to offer sympathy, and one elder said, "You must hold a great ceremony to honor the spirit of your ox. If you don't, misfortune will come." Another said, "You must sacrifice a goat to guide its soul to heaven." Suri's heart ached. He wanted to do what was right, but felt lost amid the noise of opinions. That night, unable to sleep, he went to the small shrine at the edge of his field and lit a single candle. "If the Buddha truly hears," he prayed softly, "please show me how to honor this life with truth." The next morning, as dawn broke, an old monk appeared at his gate. He carried no bowl, only a walking stick polished smooth by years of travel. Suri bowed and offered him a seat. The monk smiled kindly. "I was passing through and felt your sorrow on the wind," he said. "Tell me, what troubles you?" Suri explained everything: the death of the ox, the advice of the villagers, his confusion about what was right. "I want to help my friend find peace," he said, "but I do not know how." The monk listened, then said, "When someone we love dies, human or animal, we think we must do something grand to show devotion. But tears and rituals do not feed the soul of the departed. Only goodness does. The true offering is not in burning incense, but in burning away selfishness." Suri frowned. "But if I don't perform the ceremony, won't the spirits suffer?" The monk pointed toward the field where sunlight was touching the wet soil. "Your ox suffered only in labor, not in death. What you call its spirit is already at rest, as water returns to the river. If you wish to honor it, help another life as it helped you. Feed a hungry person. Give water to a thirsty animal. That merit will reach where your tears cannot." Suri bowed deeply, his eyes glistening. "So the best way to pray is to do good?" "Yes," the monk said gently. "When you give kindness in memory of someone, your heart becomes the altar and your action becomes the offering. That is how love continues." That day, instead of spending his meager savings on rituals, Suri used the money to cook a large pot of rice porridge. He walked from door to door, feeding children, widows, and weary travelers. "Two each," he said. "Eat well, and may the peace of my ox go with you." The villagers were puzzled. "Why no chanting, no drums, no sacrifice?" they asked. Suri only smiled. "My ox would not want another creature to die for him. He carried life on his back. Let this be his gift in return." That evening, when the old monk returned to the field, Suri told him what he had done. The monk closed his eyes and said, "Your offering has already reached the heavens. When love is shared without expectation, it becomes boundless. The ox gave its strength to sustain your body. Now you give your kindness to sustain the world." Thus the circle of giving continues. As the sun set, a cool breeze moved across the field. Suri felt a quiet presence, like a familiar breath beside him. He knew, without needing proof, that his old friend was at peace. Months passed, and life returned to normal. The field was tilled by a new ox, younger but less steady. One afternoon, a wealthy landowner rode past and saw Suri working barefoot in the mud. He stopped and said mockingly, "You could have sold your old ox before it died and earned enough for a better one. Instead, you wasted time feeding beggars. Foolish kindness earns no profit." Suri looked up and smiled. "Perhaps not in gold," he said, "but in peace." The man laughed and rode away, but that night a heavy storm swept through the village, flooding the landowner's estate. Only Suri's fields remained unharmed, the soil rich and dark, as if protected by unseen hands. When the villagers came to marvel, Suri said quietly, "The earth remembers compassion." Years later, when Suri himself grew old, people from neighboring villages came to seek his advice. He would tell them, "Do not waste your grief on smoke and stone. When someone dies, let your sorrow turn into action. Plant a tree, feed a stray, teach a child. The merit of such acts travels farther than prayers shouted into the wind." His words spread, and slowly the custom of his village changed. Instead of lavish funerals, families began to gather in silence, performing small acts of kindness in the name of their loved ones. They called it the living ceremony. And though some outsiders mocked the simplicity of it, those who practiced it found a peace deeper than any ritual could give. This story reminds us that devotion without understanding can easily become empty habit. True reverence is not measured by smoke, sound, or spectacle, but by how much goodness flows from the heart. The Buddha once taught, Better than 1,000 offerings is one act of pure compassion. When someone dies, the most sacred thing we can do is continue their love, to let the loss soften us instead of harden us. Grief becomes wisdom when it opens our eyes to the fragile beauty of life. And from that awareness arises a natural wish to care for others. Reflection, practice. Think of someone you have lost or someone you miss deeply. Instead of sinking into sorrow, let their memory inspire an act of goodness. Feed a hungry person, donate to a cause, offer your time to someone who is lonely. When you do, whisper softly, "May this kindness reach you." No incense is needed, no altar, no perfect words, only the quiet sincerity of the heart. Love never ends, it only changes form. Each good deed is a bridge across worlds, carrying peace from the living to the departed. When we live this way, every act becomes a prayer, and every breath becomes an offering. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series. Wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause, soften the edges of your day, let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Story 11. The Thief and the Golden Pot. Even mistakes can be gateways to awakening. When we turn around, the same step that once led us astray becomes the first step toward freedom. In a small town at the edge of a forest, there lived a thief named Ramu. He was clever, quick, and invisible when he needed to be. People feared him, not for violence, but for his quiet hands that could make anything vanish. Yet behind his cunning, there was a deep weariness. He often lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of his hut, listening to the crickets and whispering to himself, "Why do I steal? What am I searching for?" But the next morning, hunger or habit would drive him back into the shadows. One day, while wandering through a nearby village, he overheard a rumor about an old monk who lived alone in the forest. The villagers said the monk owned nothing except one golden pot, a gift from a grateful merchant. They said he used it to cook food for travelers who came to the monastery. Ramu's eyes lit up. "A monk with a golden pot," he muttered. "Who would suspect a holy man to be my next mark?" That night, as the moon hung low behind the trees, he set off quietly toward the forest. He found the monastery easily, a simple hut built of wood and stone, with a small fire flickering inside. Through the open door, he saw the old monk sitting cross-legged, eyes closed, face serene. Beside him sat the pot, gleaming softly in the firelight. Ramu's heart pounded. He waited until the monk seemed lost in meditation, then crept forward like a shadow. But just as his fingers brushed the handle of the pot, the monk's calm voice filled the room. "Are you hungry, traveler?" Ramu froze. I... The monk opened his eyes and smiled. "Please, sit. The rice will be ready soon." The thief stared at him in confusion. "You're not angry. Why would I be?" said the monk gently. "If you came for the pot, take it, but eat first." Ramu's throat went dry. He didn't understand. In the world he knew, people cursed, shouted, or struck at thieves. Yet here was a man offering him food. He sat hesitantly by the fire while the monk ladled warm rice into a bowl and placed it before him. As Ramu ate, the monk said softly, "This pot is made of gold, but it cannot fill an empty heart. Hunger of the body is simple. A bowl of rice will cure it. But hunger of the mind is endless. What are you truly looking for?" Ramu looked up sharply. "Gold," he said. "I need gold to live." The monk nodded. "Gold can buy you food, comfort, and shelter. But tell me, when your stomach is full, do you feel peace?" Ramu hesitated. "No, but that's life." The monk smiled. "Then perhaps you are chasing the wrong treasure." Ramu said nothing more that night. When he finished eating, the monk handed him the golden pot. "If this will help you, take it. But before you go, promise me one thing. When you realize what it cannot give you, come back." The thief nodded quickly, grabbed the pot, and disappeared into the forest. He sold it the next morning to a merchant for a large sum of money. For the first time in his life, he felt rich. He bought new clothes, feasted on wine, and slept in a soft bed. But by the end of the week, the money was gone. His old restlessness returned, sharper than before. The faces of those he had cheated haunted him in dreams, and behind every thought was the quiet, steady image of the monk's smile. Finally, one evening, he found himself walking back toward the forest, driven by a feeling he couldn't explain. When he reached the monastery, the monk was sweeping the path. Seeing him, the old man simply said, "Ah, you've come home." Ramu fell to his knees. "Why did you let me steal from you? Why didn't you stop me?" The monk set down his broom and replied, "Because you were already carrying a heavier burden than any pot. You came to steal gold, but it was compassion you truly needed to find. Sometimes, a thief must take what he wants in order to discover what he really lacks." Tears welled in Ramu's eyes. "I want to change," he said, "but I don't know how." "Begin by being honest," said the monk. "Confess what you have done, not to me, but to yourself. See the harm it brought, and let remorse be the seed of wisdom. Then serve others to balance what was taken." Ramu stayed with the monk. He swept the grounds, carried water, and helped travelers who passed through. At first, guilt weighed heavily on him. Every bowl of food he served felt like repayment for his past. But slowly, something shifted. He began to find joy in giving. The hands that once stole now gave freely. One day, while cooking rice, he looked into the old pot, now blackened with soot, and laughed softly. "You were never the treasure," he said. "The treasure was this peace." The monk, sitting nearby, smiled. When we turn our mistakes into understanding, even sin becomes a teacher. The gold you once stole has long been spent, but the lesson it brought will stay with you forever. Years passed. Ramu became a monk himself, known for his gentleness and insight. When travelers asked how he found the path, he would tell them his story without shame. "Once," he said, "I was a thief who took what wasn't mine, but compassion stole me back." He taught others that repentance is not about punishment, but transformation, that even in darkness there is a door. "No one is too lost to return," he would say. The Buddha never rejects the fallen. He simply waits until they stop running. This story reminds us that mistakes are not final. They are invitations to see, to feel, to awaken. We all carry moments of regret, things we wish we could undo. Yet when we meet those moments with awareness instead of judgment, they become mirrors, reflecting the truth of our nature. The Buddha once taught that the greatest miracle is not walking on water or turning stones into jewels, but transforming ignorance into wisdom and hatred into compassion. Every time we look honestly at our own wrongdoing and choose to grow, we perform that miracle. Reflection, practice. Tonight, think of one mistake that still lingers in your memory. Instead of pushing it away, breathe and look at it with kindness. Ask yourself, what did this teach me? What part of me grew because of it? Write down one lesson and one small way you can live differently because of it. Perhaps a word of apology, a helpful act, or a quiet vow to do better. Remember, when the mind turns toward understanding, even the past begins to heal. The thief became a monk not because the world forgave him, but because he forgave himself and used his guilt as a lamp to light the path ahead. Your own heart carries that same light, waiting to shine the moment you stop running and dare to look back with love. Story 12. The King and the Jar of Wine. No one can save us but ourselves. Every joy and sorrow ripens from the seeds we have sown. In the ancient land of Kosala, there once ruled King Prasenajit, a wise and thoughtful monarch known for his fairness. He was respected by nobles and commoners alike, but in his later years, a quiet melancholy began to follow him. Though his palace gleamed with wealth, his mind was clouded with unease. One evening, after a long council meeting, he dismissed his advisors and sat alone in the royal garden. The full moon shimmered on the lotus pond, and the soft wind carried the scent of jasmine. Yet peace eluded him. "Why?" he whispered to himself. "Does sorrow still find me when I have done nothing wrong?" At that moment, a servant appeared, carrying a small clay jar filled with fine wine. The servant bowed and said, "Your Majesty, this was a gift from a neighboring king." The king smiled faintly. "Then let it be shared," he said. He poured himself a cup and drank. The wine was rich and fragrant. He drank again and again, until the ache in his heart began to soften. Perhaps peace, he thought, is hidden in forgetfulness. Soon, the nightly drink became a habit. Each evening he would pour from the same jar, chasing silence through intoxication. The more he drank, the duller his wisdom became, and the sharper his temper grew. The ministers noticed, the guards whispered, but none dared to speak. One morning, as he stumbled through the hall, a young monk was waiting at the palace gate. He bowed and said gently, "Your Majesty, may I speak?" The king frowned. "Who are you to question me?" The monk replied, "Only a mirror for your reflection." The king laughed bitterly. "Then reflect this. I am suffering, though I rule a kingdom. I drink to forget, yet my sorrow deepens. Tell me, wise one, who has cursed me?" The monk looked at him with kind eyes. "No one," he said softly. "You sip your own karma, as surely as you sip that wine." The king's smile faded. "Are you accusing me of causing my own misery?" "Not accusing," said the monk, reminding, "every thought, word, and deed is a seed. We do not choose the rain, but we do choose what we plant. The fruit that ripens, sweet or bitter, grows from our own soil." The king invited him inside. "Then explain this," he said. "I have ruled with justice. I have fed the poor, built temples, protected the weak. Why does my heart feel like a barren field?" The monk gestured toward the wine jar beside the throne. "Because even good deeds can lose their roots when watered with delusion. You built your kingdom wisely, but lately you have been building walls inside your own mind. You drink not from joy, but from avoidance. Each cup says, I do not wish to see, but karma waits for clarity. The king stared at the jar. You speak as if this jar holds my fate. The monk smiled. Indeed it does, not because of what is inside, but because of what you pour into yourself when you reach for it. Every habit is a teacher. Every choice is a mirror. Shall I tell you its story? The king nodded, and the monk continued. Long ago, this jar belonged to another ruler. He too sought comfort in its wine. When his kingdom faced drought, he blamed the gods. When his soldiers deserted, he blamed their weakness. But when his mind finally broke from anger and regret, he saw what he had refused to see. Every action had been his own. The drought came because he overused the land. His soldiers fled because he ruled by fear. The gods had never cursed him. He had simply sown suffering with his own hands. The monk paused, then said, When he died, his soul was reborn again and again, drawn to the taste of that same wine, until one lifetime he awoke before the first sip. Perhaps, Majesty, this jar found its way to you for the same reason. The king sat in silence. The moonlight now seemed cold. He lifted the jar, staring into it as though seeing his reflection at the bottom. Then if I put it away, will my karma end? The monk shook his head, not by hiding the jar, but by seeing clearly what it means. Karma is not punishment, it is instruction. The moment you see cause and effect without denial, wisdom begins. You cannot erase what has been sown, but you can stop planting the same seeds. The next morning, the king ordered the wine jar to be brought before the court. His ministers gathered, expecting another banquet. Instead, the king stood and said, This jar is my teacher. The courtiers looked at one another, confused. He continued, For months, I drank from it thinking it held peace. But peace is not found in escape, it is found in understanding. This jar has shown me that suffering is not given to us, it is grown within us. Today, I pour away its contents, not out of shame, but in gratitude for the lesson. He lifted the jar and poured the wine into the earth. The fragrance spread through the hall. May the ground transform it, he said softly, as understanding transforms ignorance. The monk bowed and smiled. The soil of awareness bears the sweetest fruit. From that day forward, King 𝐏𝐿𝐴 ruled with renewed clarity. He listened before judging, breathed before reacting, and accepted both praise and blame with calm. When misfortunes arose, droughts, losses, betrayals, he no longer asked, Who did this to me? But instead, what can I learn from this? And though life continued to bring trials, he met each one with a heart steady as the earth. When asked how he had changed so deeply, he said, I used to think fate was a storm blowing from outside. Now I know it is the wind of my own mind. When I calm it, the clouds part. This story is not about kings or jars. It is about the quiet recognition that no one, not even the most enlightened teacher, can walk the path for us. Others can point the way, but the walking is ours alone. The Buddha once said, You are your own refuge. No one else can purify you. These words are both a challenge and a gift. They remind us that responsibility is freedom, for if suffering is self-made, so too is peace. The next time sorrow visits, instead of asking, Why me? Try asking, What seed have I planted that brought this fruit? Not to blame, but to understand, because in understanding, we find the power to plant anew. Reflection, practice. Bring to mind one sadness, disappointment, or recurring difficulty in your life. Breathe gently and ask yourself what thoughts, choices, or habits might have helped create this. Then, without judgment, imagine planting a different seed: patience instead of anger, generosity instead of fear, presence instead of escape. Whisper softly to yourself, "May I learn, and may I sow better from this day forward." Karma is not a chain, it is a garden. The moment you see that every harvest begins with a seed in your own hand, you are no longer a victim of fate, you are the gardener of your destiny. Story 13. The Serpent Man and the Monk Sariputta. A single moment of goodness can transform countless lifetimes. When wisdom visits, open your heart and listen. Long ago, deep within the forested valleys of Magadha, there lived a strange being, half man, half serpent. He was known as Naga, the Serpent Man. His body was scaled and powerful. His eyes glowed like amber, but his mind was restless and dark. In a distant past, Naga had once been a proud warrior. Consumed by anger and jealousy, he had caused great harm to others, and in the endless cycles of rebirth, those seeds of hatred had ripened into his current form. Though his body was fierce and his strength immense, he lived in loneliness and shame. Each night, he wandered through the forest, watching the distant lights of human villages. He longed to be among them, to feel warmth and laughter again. But when he tried to approach, people screamed and fled. Mothers hid their children. Warriors raised their swords. And so, with each rejection, his heart hardened a little more. One day, as he lay coiled beneath a tree by the river, a soft voice broke through the silence. "Peace be with you, traveler." Startled, Naga lifted his head and saw a monk standing nearby. The monk's robe was simple, his eyes clear as still water. He bowed slightly, unafraid. "Who are you?" Naga hissed. "I am Sariputta," said the monk gently, "a disciple of the Buddha. I was walking along the river and felt a presence of great sorrow, so I came." Naga narrowed his eyes. "You pity me, monk?" Sariputta shook his head. "No, I see your pain, but I do not pity it. I see the goodness buried beneath it." The serpent laughed bitterly. "Goodness? You see scales and fangs, and still speak of goodness?" Sariputta smiled. "I see more than form. The body is a robe we wear for a time. What you are is deeper than your shape." Naga stared at him, confused. No human had ever spoken without fear. "You should leave," he warned. "My temper is not safe." "Then I will stay until it is safe," Sariputta replied. "Anger cannot harm one who meets it with compassion." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind moved softly through the trees, and something within the serpent stirred, not rage, but a strange warmth he hadn't felt in lifetimes. That night, Sariputta lit a small lamp beside the river. He sat in meditation, breathing quietly. Naga watched from a distance, his thoughts churning. He felt drawn to the stillness, the calm radiating from the monk's presence. It was like sitting beside a fire without being burned. When dawn came, Naga slithered closer. "Why do you not run from me?" he asked. Sariputta opened his eyes and said, "Because fear only feeds what is dark. Understanding dissolves it." The serpent frowned. "What do you understand of me?" "That beneath your fearsome form lives a being who longs to be free," Sariputta said. "Freedom does not come by changing the body, but by transforming the heart." The words fell like drops of cool rain on parched earth. Naga looked away, trembling. "You don't know what I've done," he whispered. The lives I've taken, the anger I've carried, I am cursed beyond redemption." Sariputta's voice was soft but steady. "There is no curse that compassion cannot loosen. Even a single moment of sincere kindness can open the door to countless lifetimes of peace. Would you like to learn how?" For a long time, Naga said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. Under the shade of the great tree, Sariputta began to speak of the Buddha's teachings, of cause and effect, of the power of intention, of how every thought and deed plants seeds in the soil of the heart. He spoke not as a preacher, but as one who had walked through his own storms. "The past cannot be erased," he said, "but the present can be awakened. If you choose goodness now, you begin to shape a different future. The fire that once burned others can become a light to guide them." Naga listened, his fierce eyes softening. He asked questions, not out of defiance, but from genuine curiosity. "Do you truly believe someone like me can change?" "I do not believe," said Sariputta. "I have seen it. The Buddha himself taught that all beings, no matter how lost, carry within them the potential for awakening. You are no exception." Tears welled in the serpent's eyes, not of sorrow, but of relief. It was as if, for the first time in ages, he could breathe without guilt. Days passed, and Naga stayed near the Daiphan monk, listening each morning as Sariputta recited verses of the Dharma. He learned to meditate, awkwardly at first, his body coiled and trembling, his mind darting like a fish. But gradually, he began to taste stillness. When anger rose, he would remember Sariputta's words: "Breathe first, see clearly, then act." One evening, a storm swept through the valley. Lightning flashed, and the river rose dangerously high. Sariputta's lamp blew out, and the water threatened to wash away the small hut they had built together. Without hesitation, Naga lifted the monk onto his back and carried him to higher ground. When the rain stopped, Sariputta said quietly, "Your strength, once used for destruction, has now saved a life. That is transformation." Naga bowed his head. "If I had not met you, I would still be lost." Sariputta smiled. "You met not me, but your own goodness, reflected through me. The teacher only holds up a mirror. The seeing must be your own." When word of the serpent's change spread, many monks came to see for themselves. Some were fearful, others skeptical. "How can a creature of such past violence dwell among us?" they asked. Sariputta answered gently, "Judge him not by what he was, but by the kindness he practices now." The Buddha did not divide beings into worthy and unworthy. He saw only those awakening and those not yet. Over time, Naga became a protector of the monastery. He no longer feared his form or his past. When villagers came seeking blessings, he greeted them with humility, offering flowers and water, and when children approached him, he would lower his great head so they could touch it without fear. The sight of their laughter was the sweetest offering he had ever known. Years later, when Sariputta prepared to depart to another region, Naga bowed deeply before him. "Master," he said, "you gave me life." The monk placed a hand on the serpent's head. "No, my friend, you gave yourself life when you chose to listen. Remember, awakening is not in the words you hear, but in the heart that opens." As the monk walked away, the morning light shone across the river. Naga watched until he disappeared into the horizon, then turned toward the forest, whispering softly, "May every being find the chance I was given." This story reminds us that redemption is never denied to those who turn toward truth. A single moment of genuine goodness, one breath of understanding, one act of compassion can transform the course of endless lifetimes. No matter how deep the darkness, the potential for light remains within. The key is to listen to the voice of wisdom when it comes, whether through a teacher, a friend, or a quiet intuition in the heart. The Buddha once said, "If you meet someone wise, open your mind as you would open your hands to receive water." For wisdom does not impose itself, it waits to be welcomed. Reflection practice. Today, take a few quiet minutes to listen, truly listen. It may be a kind word from a friend, a gentle insight from a teacher, or even the still voice within you that says, "Let go, begin again." If the heart feels touched by truth, do not dismiss it. Let that single good thought become a seed, because one pure intention, even for a moment, can soften lifetimes of pain. Just as the serpent found freedom not by changing his form, but by opening his heart. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause, soften the edges of your day, let your body rest, take in a slow, quiet breath, and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required. Just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Chapter 3. Living with Compassion. Seeing who we truly are. This chapter is a journey from kindness toward wisdom, from reacting to understanding, from judging to embracing. Through simple yet profound encounters, we'll see how compassion frees the heart and how self-awareness reveals our true nature beneath fear, pride, and habit. Each story invites reflection, to act with love even when misunderstood, to awaken now rather than later, and to live gently in a world that is both imperfect and sacred. Story 14. Sariputta and the Arrogant Householder. The Buddha does not condemn, he only loves. Patience is the highest wisdom, and compassion is true strength. In the city of Rajagaha, there lived a wealthy householder named Veera. He was known for his intelligence, his eloquence, and his pride. Though he considered himself a man of reason, his heart was closed to anything that challenged his beliefs. He admired philosophers and scholars, but he often mocked the monks who walked barefoot through the streets. "They speak of enlightenment," he would say, "but they live off others' charity. What kind of wisdom is that?" One day, as the sun set over the city walls, Veera saw a crowd gathering in the market. People were listening intently to a monk seated beneath a banyan tree. His robe was simple, his face calm and radiant. It was Sariputta, the Buddha's chief disciple, renowned for his serene presence and profound understanding. Curiosity stirred in Veera's mind. He pushed through the crowd and stood before the monk. "Venerable one," he said loudly, "I have heard of your master and his teachings, but tell me, why should anyone follow a man who owns nothing and claims to know everything? What kind of truth is that?" The crowd fell silent. All eyes turned to Sariputta, waiting for his reply. But the monk simply looked up, his gaze steady, his voice soft. "Friend," he said, "truth does not belong to anyone. It is like sunlight. It shines on those who open their windows, not on those who close their doors. Vera laughed mockingly. Pretty words, but empty. You monks speak of letting go, yet you cling to your beliefs like merchants cling to their coins. You are no different. Sariputta bowed slightly. You may be right, he said. Perhaps we still have much to learn. His humility only angered Vera more. So you admit you are not wise. Then why does your master let fools like you teach others? The crowd murmured in discomfort. Some wanted to defend the monk, but Sariputta raised his hand gently. Friend, he said again, when someone insults me, I see it as a teacher arriving. You are showing me where my patience still needs to grow. For that, I thank you. Vera's face flushed with frustration. He had expected argument, not kindness. Unable to bear the monk's calmness, he turned and stormed away. Later that evening, as Sariputta prepared to leave the marketplace, a young boy ran up to him. Venerable, the boy said, why didn't you defend yourself? He humiliated you in front of everyone. Sariputta smiled. Would you scold a blind man for stepping on your foot? The boy looked puzzled. No, because he cannot see. Then why be angry at someone who cannot yet see clearly? Sariputta said softly. Compassion is not about winning arguments. It is about seeing pain beneath the words of another. The next morning, Vera awoke with an uneasy feeling. The image of the monk's gentle eyes haunted him. No one had ever responded to his anger with peace. He had tried to provoke, to humiliate, and yet Sariputta had only bowed. Why? He wondered. Why didn't he fight back? Unable to shake the thought, he went to the monastery the following day. There he found Sariputta sweeping the path. The monk looked up and smiled as if greeting an old friend. Why do you smile at me? Vera asked. After how I treated you, aren't you angry? Sariputta set down his broom. Anger is a burden I choose not to carry, he said. When someone offers me an insult, I can choose whether to pick it up or let it fall. Vera frowned. But I was wrong, wasn't I? Sariputta shook his head. There is no need to call it right or wrong. You were speaking from what you believed. When understanding grows, your words will change naturally. Something in Vera's chest softened. He bowed his head. Teach me, he said quietly. Teach me how to live like that, without bitterness. Sariputta placed his palms together. Begin with patience, he said. When someone hurts you, breathe once before reacting. See not the insult, but the suffering behind it. Every harsh word is a wound trying to speak. Over the following weeks, Vera visited often. He listened to the teachings of the Buddha and began to see the truth in what he once mocked. His pride melted little by little, replaced by humility. One day, he said to Sariputta, I used to think power meant defeating others. Now I see it means defeating the anger within myself. Sariputta nodded. That is true victory, the one that harms no one. Months later, when Vera's own servants insulted him over a misunderstanding, he felt the old fire of rage rise in his chest. But then he remembered Sariputta's words. See the wound beneath the words. He took a deep breath, smiled, and said, May you find peace. The servants froze, astonished by the unexpected kindness. That night, Vera went to the monastery once more. Master, he said, I think I finally understand. When I was blind, you did not punish me. You loved me. That love opened my eyes. Sariputta smiled, his face serene in the moonlight. Then you have seen the Buddha's heart. The world does not change through anger or punishment. It changes through patience. The patience that comes from understanding that all beings, even those who harm us, are still learning how to see. This story reminds us that true strength is not in the power to argue or to win, but in the courage to remain kind when we are misunderstood. Patience is not weakness, it is clarity, the ability to see beyond another's ignorance to the pain that causes it. The Buddha taught that compassion is not soft, it is the most unshakable force in the universe. When we choose to respond with love instead of anger, we do not merely forgive others, we free ourselves. Reflection, practice. The next time someone criticizes or misunderstands you, pause before reacting. Breathe, then silently wish them peace. May you be free from suffering. Notice how your heart softens. That simple act turns conflict into understanding and transforms hurt into wisdom. In that moment, you embody what Sariputta showed, that the greatest power is not to strike back, but to stay gentle in the face of fire. Story 15. The Three Drunken Men. To recognize a mistake is the beginning of awakening. Those who feel shame are the first to awaken. In a quiet town near the Ganges River, three friends spent most of their evenings drinking together. They were good men at heart, kind to their families and generous to strangers, but they had fallen into the comfort of habit. What began as a way to ease their worries had turned into a nightly escape from responsibility. One evening, after a festival, they drank until the moon rose high. Their laughter echoed through the streets as they stumbled toward home. But on the way, they passed by the monastery at the edge of town, where the monks were chanting softly. The oldest of the three, whose name was 𝐂𝐼R𝐻, stopped and listened. "Do you hear that?" he slurred. "Even at this hour, they're still praying. For what? Life is short. Why waste it sitting in silence?" The second man, Ravi, nodded. "Maybe they pray for fools like us," he joked, and the others laughed loudly. But the youngest, a man named Soma, did not laugh. He stood still, watching the soft glow of the lanterns flicker inside the temple. Something stirred in his chest, a quiet discomfort, like a whisper reminding him that his life could be more than this endless cycle of pleasure and regret. "Let's go home," he said softly. "We're making noise. It's not right to disturb them." The others teased him. "Since when did you become holy?" Ravi said, clapping him on the back. "Come, one more drink for the road." Soma shook his head. "No more tonight." They laughed again, louder this time, and walked ahead without him. Soma stood alone under the banyan tree, listening to the monks' chants fade into the night. The next morning, when the three awoke, their heads throbbed and their memories blurred. But what lingered most was not the taste of wine, it was unease. 𝐂𝐼R𝐻, proud as always, said, "It was a good night, I feel fine." Yet his eyes darted toward the empty bottles and the sunlight creeping across the floor. Ravi groaned and said, "Perhaps we drank too much, but what does it matter? Life is meant to be enjoyed." Soma remained silent. He felt shame rise within him, not for drinking, but for mocking those monks who had harmed no one. That afternoon, he returned alone to the monastery. He found the head monk sweeping the courtyard. Bowing his head, Soma said, "Venerable One, last night my friends and I disturbed your peace. I was drunk and disrespectful. Please forgive me." The monk smiled gently. "Forgiveness is not mine to give," he said. "When you see a mistake clearly, it is already forgiven by truth itself." Soma looked puzzled. "But how can seeing it be enough? I still feel ashamed." The monk nodded. "Good. Shame is not to punish you. It is the first stirring of wisdom. When the heart blushes before what is wrong, it has already turned toward what is right." Soma bowed again. Then how should I make it right? The monk pointed to the broom beside him. Help me sweep. Clean the dust from the ground, as you clean the dust from your mind. Soma smiled and took the broom. As they worked side by side, the monk spoke softly about mindfulness, about how small actions shape the mind. We cannot erase what is past, he said, but we can plant new seeds in the soil of this moment. Every act of sincerity transforms karma into wisdom. That evening, when Soma returned home, his friends were waiting with wine again. But this time, when they offered him a cup, he said gently, "Not tonight." 𝐿 scoffed. "Ah, our holy man returns." Soma only smiled. "Not holy," he said. "Just tired of waking up empty." Ravi looked at him curiously. "What did the monks say?" "They said nothing special," Soma replied. "Just that when you see your own mistake and stop running from it, the heart begins to breathe again." The two laughed it off at first, but over time they noticed a change in their friend. Soma rose early, helped the poor, and spoke kindly to everyone. He still laughed, still worked, but his joy felt lighter, not from forgetting, but from forgiving himself. Slowly, the others began to feel the difference. One day, 𝐿 put down his cup and said quietly, "Maybe I'm tired of waking up empty too." Ravi nodded. "Perhaps we should visit that monastery you keep talking about." Soma smiled. "When you go, don't ask for forgiveness. Just see clearly. That is enough." Years later, people in the town would tell the story of the three men who used to be drunks but became friends of the monastery. They funded wells, built shelters, and cared for travelers. When asked what had changed them, Soma would say, "A moment of shame became a doorway to peace. It was not guilt that saved us. It was honesty." This story reminds us that awakening rarely begins in perfection. It begins in a quiet moment when the heart admits, "I was wrong." That simple realization, born from humility, opens the mind wider than 1,000 lectures. The Buddha taught that remorse, when seen clearly, is not a chain but a key. It frees us from denial and points us back toward kindness. The danger is not in making mistakes. It is in refusing to see them. Reflection, practice. Think of one small mistake you've made recently, a word that hurt someone, a promise you forgot, a moment you lost patience. Close your eyes and breathe. Whisper softly to yourself, "I see it. I'm sorry. May I do better." There is no need to punish yourself. Simply see clearly and let that awareness guide your next step. When you can bow before your own imperfection without self-hate, you are already awakening, because those who dare to be honest are always the first to be free. Story 16. The monk who was laughed at. The brighter the lamp, the easier it is to see the dust. No one is perfect, but anyone can be sincere. At dawn, the monastery bell rang like a clear river in the sky. Novices swept the stone path. Elder monks prepared for the alms round. Among them walked a quiet monk named 𝐿𝐴𝐼. His steps were measured, his gaze gentle. People in the town often said they felt calmer just watching him pass. That morning, after a night of rain, the streets were slick with mud. 𝐿𝐴𝐼 walked mindfully, bowl in hand, robe arranged with care. Near the market well, a child ran across his path, chasing a stray ribbon. 𝐿𝐴𝐼 shifted quickly to avoid the child. His sandal slipped, and in a sudden, awkward motion he stumbled, clutching his robe to keep it from falling. The bowl tilted, the robe wrinkled. For a breath or two, he looked less like a serene monk and more like any startled person trying not to fall. Laughter burst from a nearby group. traveling ascetics, who prided themselves on strict austerities. One pointed and snickered, "Look at the holy man, can't even walk without fussing over his robe." The crowd caught the tone. A few bystanders chuckled, others looked away, embarrassed for him. 𝐿 steadied himself. He checked that the child was safe, then turned to the ascetics and placed his palms together. "Thank you," he said softly. "You've reminded me to be more careful. May you all walk safely today." Then he continued on the alms round, receiving rice and fruit with the same quiet presence as always. A man named Dev returned to his stall, shaking his head. "Strange," he muttered to his wife. They laughed at him, but he didn't defend his pride. He thanked them. The image stayed with many who had seen it. The incident was small, almost nothing, and yet it revealed something unmistakable. The monk's humility was real. By noon, the story had already grown meaner in the telling. He almost dropped his bowl. He grabbed at his clothes like a frightened child. With each retelling, the stumble became bigger, the monk smaller. The more people repeated it, the more they forgot the moment that mattered, his calm bow and blessing. That evening, as the light softened, one of the traveling ascetics lingered near the monastery gate. He had been the loudest to laugh. Now his expression was troubled. A novice greeted him and brought him to the courtyard, where 𝐿 was rinsing his bowl. "I came to apologize," the ascetic began, eyes downcast. "I laughed at you this morning." 𝐿 dried the bowl and set it aside. "Thank you for coming," he said kindly. "Are you well?" The ascetic shifted uncomfortably. "I've kept vows for years. I endure heat and cold, hunger and pain. But when you slipped, I couldn't bear your mistake. I wanted your robe to prove you were above error. Perhaps I wanted to feel above you." 𝐿 nodded. "It is easier to notice a speck on a window when the room is full of light," he said. "The robe invites attention. People expect it to hang perfectly, yet robes crease, sandals slip, bodies stumble. The mind's response is where practice truly is." The ascetic glanced up. "You were not angry?" "I felt a spark of embarrassment," 𝐿 admitted with a small smile. Then a breath arrived, and with it a choice: feed the flame or let it cool. I noticed the child was safe, and gratitude came, so I bowed to the lesson. They sat together on the low steps. Crickets began their evening chorus. The ascetic whispered, "I have spent so long trying to be beyond reproach that I forgot how to be honest. Your stumble revealed my arrogance more clearly than years of sermons." 𝐿 said, "Mindfulness is not a performance of flawlessness. It is a willingness to see, in real time, what is happening, and to respond with truth. If I had fallen, the practice would be the same. Notice, breathe, begin again. The robe does not make a mind pure. The next breath does." The ascetic closed his eyes. "Teach me how to begin again." "Begin small," 𝐿 replied. "When you stand, feel your feet on the ground. When you eat, notice the first swallow. When you speak, listen for the impulse that wants to prove something. In those small moments, choose sincerity over display." The ascetic returned to his companions and told them what had passed. Some mocked him for softening. Others were curious. A few days later, he came back, alone. He asked to stay for a fortnight to learn. The abbot welcomed him without comment, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world for a critic to become a student. During those days, the ascetic practiced walking meditation beside 𝐿. He watched how the monk lifted and placed each foot in silence, how he paused when dogs barked and smiled when children waved, how he resumed when the world settled. He noticed the countless tiny choices that made up a day, subtle, invisible, sincere. One afternoon they walked past the well again. A woman dropped a jar, and water splashed across the stones. 𝐒𝐿 stepped aside. His robe took a stripe of mud. The ascetic held his breath, waiting for annoyance. Instead, 𝐒𝐿 laughed softly and helped gather the shards. "Nothing stays clean for long," he said, "but a clean heart is renewed every moment." The ascetic felt something loosen in his chest, a knot tied by years of trying to appear stainless. He bowed. "I used to think holiness meant never stumbling. Now I see it means never pretending." When his fortnight ended, he stood at the gate with his pack. "I still belong to my path," he told 𝐒𝐿, "but I will carry this with me. The brighter the lamp, the more clearly we see the dust, and the more gently we must wipe it away." 𝐒𝐿 placed his palms together. "May your lamp keep shining," he said, "and when dust appears, may you greet it like an old friend who helps you. Remember what matters." This story reminds us that people will always see our stains more easily than our efforts. That is not a reason to harden. It is an invitation to deepen. Perfection is not the point. Presence is. Sincerity is. The practice is not to never slip, but to notice when we do, to care for what's around us, and to start again without shame. Reflection practice. Today, choose one small action and make it your whole practice. Washing a cup, tying your shoes, opening a door. Feel the body, watch the mind, soften the heart. If you fumble, smile and continue. Let your life be a lamp, and let each breath be the gentle hand that wipes away the dust. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause, soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Story 17, The Lazy Farmer and the Promise of Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the sweetest lie. Awakening begins the moment we stop waiting. There was once a farmer named Danu who lived in a quiet valley surrounded by fertile land. His fields were wide, his oxen strong, and his granaries full. Yet, despite all he had, he often sat beneath a tree doing nothing, gazing at the clouds drifting lazily across the sky. He told himself he deserved rest. "I'll plant the new seeds tomorrow," he would say. "I'll fix the fence tomorrow. I'll help my neighbor. Harvest tomorrow." Tomorrow became his favorite word, a gentle pillow for his conscience. The seasons passed slowly. Spring became summer. Summer turned to autumn. The fields that once shimmered with rice now grew dry and patchy. His tools rusted. His ox grew thin. When neighbors invited him to work together, he smiled and waved them off. "I'll join you next time," he said. One day, as he sat beneath his usual tree, an old monk walked along the path. The monk carried a single bowl and leaned on a wooden staff. His robe was faded from long travel, yet his eyes were clear as morning light. "Good day, farmer," the monk said. "You seem at peace. The valley must be kind to you." Danu smiled. It is, Venerable One. I have everything I need. Food, land, shelter. Life is good. The monk looked around at the dry fields and empty granaries. And yet, he said gently, I see your soil resting too long. The farmer laughed. I'll work again soon. There's no need to rush. The rains will come again next season. The monk nodded. Perhaps, but have you ever known which rain will be your last? Danu frowned. I'm still young. There's plenty of time. The monk sat beside him beneath the tree. Once, I met a man just like you. He said the same words. Tomorrow, next time, later. But death came to him while he was planning to begin. He died not from illness, but from waiting. The farmer fell silent. The wind stirred the dry grass. Tell me, the monk continued, what is it that you postpone so faithfully? My practice, said Danu after a pause. I always meant to visit the temple, to give alms, to listen to the teachings. But life is busy, and tomorrow always feels easier than today. The monk smiled kindly. Then let us test a small truth. Imagine a field you have not plowed. Each day you promise to begin, but you do not. After a week, what happens to the soil? It hardens, Danu replied. And after a month, weeds take root. The monk looked into his eyes. So it is with the heart. When you delay goodness, the soil of the mind hardens. The weeds of regret grow deep. Danu bowed his head. You speak truth, but change feels heavy. How can I begin again? The monk reached out and touched the earth between them. By doing one small thing, not tomorrow, but now, begin with a single seed. That night, Danu could not sleep. The monk's words echoed in his mind. The soil of the mind hardens. Before dawn, he rose from bed and walked to his field. The moon still hung low over the hills. He picked up his hoe, its handle rough with neglect, and began to till the soil. Each strike of the tool felt like a breath after years of silence. When the sun rose, his back ached, but his heart felt light. He realized that the pain of effort was gentler than the weight of delay. Days turned into weeks. The farmer worked each morning, planted new seeds, mended his fences, and helped his neighbors. When people asked what had changed, he only smiled and said, "A monk taught me that tomorrow never arrives." Months later, when the monk returned to the valley, he found the fields full and golden. Danu bowed low and offered him a bowl of rice. "I finally began," he said, "one seed at a time." The monk took the bowl and nodded. "You did not begin with the field," he said. "You began with the mind. The moment you stopped waiting, you were already free." Years passed. Danu grew old, but he never lost his lesson. When younger farmers came to him for advice, he would tell them, "Don't trust tomorrow. It is a mirage that disappears when you reach for it. Whatever good you wish to do, a kind word, a small act, a prayer, do it today. The heart's harvest cannot wait." This story reminds us that procrastination is not laziness. It is fear wearing comfort's face. We tell ourselves we'll begin when conditions are perfect, forgetting that conditions are never perfect. Life does not ask for perfection, only sincerity. The Buddha once said, "There are two mistakes on the path to awakening, not starting and not going all the way. The first step, however small, matters more than all the promises made for later." The truth is, there is no later. There is only the breath you are taking now. And in this breath, kindness can begin, understanding can begin, awakening can begin. Reflection practice. Think of one good thing you've been meaning to do, a message you've postponed, a small kindness you've delayed, a moment of honesty you've avoided. Breathe, smile, and do it today. It doesn't have to be grand. A single act done now carries more light than 1,000 intentions saved for tomorrow. Because tomorrow is only a story the mind tells, and awakening, like the sunrise, only happens in the present. Story 18. King Akida and the Fall into Serpenthood. One flash of anger can burn a lifetime of merit. The final moment matters more than all the years before it. In a prosperous kingdom of the ancient plains lived King Akida, a ruler praised for generosity and fairness. He built wells where the earth was dry, offered food when harvests failed, and welcomed travelers to rest within his gates. Monks blessed his halls, children sang his name in the streets. If goodness could be counted like grain, his granaries were full. Time, however, bows to no crown. In the king's final season, illness came quietly and settled like dusk. Courtiers moved softly through the palace. Incense drifted in the corridors. Prayers rose like threads of light. The king, though weary, kept a gentle dignity. He asked to hear verses of wisdom and to offer alms even from his bed. "Let my last days," he told his ministers, "be given as my first were, to serve." On the final morning, sunlight fell across the room in a long, warm beam. Attendants fanned the air lightly to soothe his fever. One, trembling with devotion, stumbled. The fan slipped from her hand and struck the king's cheek. It was small, almost nothing, but pain is sharp when the body is fragile. In that instant, a spark leapt in the king's mind, a flash of anger, hot and bright. He glared at the servant. "How dare you, at my deathbed?" His face tightened, his chest rose with a hard breath. The spark ignited a blaze that filled the final space of his consciousness. Before a word of forgiveness could follow, the breath ended. The palace fell silent. Bells tolled, monks chanted. But in the unseen stream of becoming, the last flavor of his mind had already shaped the next form. From the coil of that single, burning moment, King Akida was reborn as a serpent in the forest beyond his own city walls. He awoke into scales and cold earth, into a body made for fear and striking. Memory clung like mist, palaces, gold, the kindness he had given, and then the fan, the flash, the fall. Shame burned in him. He hid among roots and stones, bitter at fate, bitter at himself. News spread among the wise that a serpent haunted the grove near the river. One day, a monk of great compassion came walking there. He was calm as a still lake, his robe threadbare from long journeys. Seeing the coiled shadow beneath a fig tree, he stopped and bowed. "Friend," the monk said softly, "I know your sorrow." The serpent reared, eyes hard as amber. "Leave me," he hissed. "I deserve this." The monk did not step back. "You remember the king who served his people with open hands. You remember, too, the last heat in his chest. Your form answers to that final breath. But your story is not finished." The serpent felt a tremor within, not anger, but grief. "I had a life of goodness," he said. "How could one hot second erase it?" "It did not erase it," the monk replied. "It outweighed it at the gate of passing. Water can nourish a field for years, but a single spark can still set dry straw aflame. The law is not cruel, it is precise. The mind's last taste guides the next beginning." The serpent lowered his head. "Then I am lost." "No," said the monk, "because this moment is also a beginning. If you turn your heart now, even for a breath, you plant a seed stronger than regret. Teach me," the serpent whispered. The monk spoke gently of cause and effect, of how intention steers the wheel of becoming, of how vigilance at the threshold of each breath is the training for the final one. He did not accuse, he did not frighten. He offered a path. For 7 days, he said, hold to kindness, refrain from harm. If anger rises, meet it as you would meet a wounded animal, with steadiness and care. Let your thoughts be blessings for those you once ruled and for the one who dropped the fan. The serpent listened. He chose a flat stone by the river and stayed there. He neither hunted nor hissed. When anger swelled, he breathed and remembered the monk's eyes, clear, unwavering. He whispered within, "Thank you for my life. I am sorry for my harm. I love the truth that frees all beings." On the 7th dawn, the forest changed. The serpent's body felt light, like a garment loosening. He sensed a doorway opening where breath meets stillness. With a final, tender thought of gratitude, he slipped through. In another realm, where joy does not depend on circumstance, a being awakened to gentle light. The heavy coil of shame was gone. He bowed invisibly toward the earth and toward the monk who had shown him the way back to himself. At the palace, years later, the old servant who had dropped the fan sat alone at twilight, tears soft on her face. A traveler arrived, a monk radiant with quiet. He told her a story of a king who fell to anger and rose by humility, of a serpent who learned to bless, of how a last thought can seal a fate and a new thought can unseal it. The servant pressed her palms together. "May he be at peace," she whispered. "He is," the monk said, "and so may you be." This story does not warn us to fear death. It invites us to practice for it in every living hour. The final moment matters more than the long parade of days, because it gathers them, distills them, and lights the path ahead. We cannot stage manage our last breath, but we can train the heart now, breath by breath, to lean toward kindness when surprise or pain strikes. Anger has the speed of lightning. Gratitude has the strength of a mountain. Which one we nourish in ordinary moments becomes the hand that holds us at the end. Reflection. Practice. Before sleep tonight, whisper 3 simple phrases. Thank you, I am sorry, I love you. Say them to life itself, to those you cherish, and to those you've hurt or who have hurt you. Let them soften the edges of the day. If you make this a nightly habit, you are rehearsing the last moment with tenderness. And should a fan fall, in a hospital room, on a roadside, in a quiet bed, your heart will know its line, not the hiss of anger, but a bow of love. Story 19. Ananda and the Gift of Learning. To help another understand is to plant a seed of light. When we guide others toward wisdom, both merit and insight grow together. It was near dusk when Ananda, the Buddha's devoted attendant, returned from collecting alms. The forest monastery shimmered in soft gold. Birds called gently among the trees. As he placed the offering bowl before the elder monks, he noticed a young novice sitting apart, head bowed, tears quietly streaking the dust on his face. Ananda approached with his usual calmness. "What troubles you, young one?" The boy hesitated. "Venerable sir, I can't remember the verses. I try to recite the teachings, but they slip away. My mind feels like sand. Everything I pour in disappears." Ananda smiled with understanding. He remembered how, even among the Buddha's disciples, many had struggled to hold the teachings. Wisdom, he knew, was not measured by how much one could repeat, but by how open one's heart was to truth. "Come," Ananda said softly. "Walk with me. They walked through the forest path where light and shadow danced across the leaves. "Do you know why we learn the words of the Buddha?" Ananda asked. "So we can remember them," the novice replied. "Yes," said Ananda, "but remembering is only the beginning. The words are like seeds. When you plant them in your mind, they must be cared for by patience, watered by understanding, and warmed by kindness. Only then will they grow into wisdom." The boy listened, still frowning. "But what if the soil of my mind is too poor? What if I never understand enough to be useful?" Ananda stopped walking. "Do you see that lamp over there?" he asked, pointing to a small flame flickering in the hall beyond the trees. "If you take your own small lamp and light it from that one, does the first flame lose anything?" "No," said the novice. "Both lamps shine." "That is how teaching works," Ananda said. "When you help another see clearly, both lights grow brighter. Even if you do not yet understand everything, your effort to learn becomes a gift for others. Someday, your light will help someone else who sits crying as you did today." The boy's eyes softened. "But how do I start?" "Begin by helping," Ananda said. "When you help another to learn, the words take root more deeply in your own heart. When you explain what you know, even a little, your understanding grows." The next morning, the boy joined the elder monks again. During recitation, he faltered as before, but instead of despairing, he turned to a younger novice and whispered the lines he still remembered. They practiced together, helping each other fill the gaps. Over time, the temple echoed with their shared learning, halting, patient, sincere. Ananda watched quietly, smiling. He saw that the boy's struggle was no longer heavy. It had become a bridge for compassion. Weeks later, the Buddha himself came to the monastery to teach. When the assembly gathered, Ananda told the Buddha what had happened: the tears, the encouragement, the shared study. The Buddha looked at the boy and said, "Ananda, your kindness has turned a difficulty into a path. You have taught not just words, but the meaning of the words. That true learning is never for oneself alone." The Buddha then turned to the assembly. "There are two gifts that endure beyond this life," he said. "The gift of food sustains the body for a day. The gift of truth nourishes the heart for countless lifetimes. One who helps another understand even a single verse of truth plants a seed that will flower in both." Ananda bowed his head. He understood then that his service to the Buddha, remembering every teaching, repeating it for others, was not mere memory work. It was compassion in action. To preserve the words was to keep the light alive. Years later, long after the Buddha's passing, Ananda continued to teach. When younger monks asked him how he remembered so much, he would smile and say, "I remembered because I cared. I listened not only with my ears but with my heart. And when I spoke, I gave it away again, and so it stayed." He reminded them that wisdom grows not in isolation, but in connection. Every time someone shares a book, a verse, or a kind word that helps another awaken, they build the bridge of Dharma anew. The gift of understanding is endless. It multiplies without losing itself. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Ananda spoke his final teaching to a circle of young monks. His voice was faint, but his eyes still shone with gentle clarity. "Do not wait until you are perfect to share what you know," he said. "If a thirsty traveler asks for water, will you say, 'I cannot give it until I find the purest spring'? No. You will offer what you have, now, a single cup, a kind word, a simple verse. Every act of guidance, no matter how small, becomes part of the great river of awakening. He looked at them one by one, his gaze warm. Remember this: to help another see even a little more light is to awaken twice, once for them, once for yourself. The monks sat in silence long after he finished, feeling as though the air itself had grown brighter. This story reminds us that wisdom is not a private treasure. Like a flame, it grows stronger when shared. When we guide, teach, or simply encourage someone who seeks truth, we become both student and teacher in the same breath. The Buddha's path is not a race toward knowledge, but a circle of giving, learning to receive with humility and to give with joy. In helping others rise, we rise too. Reflection practice. Think of one person who could benefit from something that once helped you. A quote, a book, a talk, a piece of insight. Share it with them today, not to preach, but to offer light. When you give even a single spark of wisdom, it multiplies across hearts unseen. And in that quiet sharing, both merit and understanding bloom together, just as Ananda's lamp once lit another. Story 20. The sage who refused the jewels. True wealth is not in adding more, but in needing less. Contentment is the greatest treasure of all. Long ago, in the kingdom of Kosala, there lived a sage who wandered barefoot through forests and villages. He owned almost nothing, just a single robe, a clay bowl, and a walking staff. Yet, wherever he went, people said that peace followed him like a quiet fragrance. He never begged for gold, never sought favor from kings, and when asked how he lived so simply, he would smile and say, "I eat when I'm hungry, I rest when I'm tired, I walk when there is road, and I stop when there is none. What else does one need?" One summer morning, as the sage rested beneath a tamarind tree, a royal procession passed along the road. Elephants, adorned with silk, moved slowly. Guards marched in gleaming armor, and at the center rode the king himself, fanning his jeweled crown. Seeing the monk's calm face, the king halted the procession. "Venerable one," he said, stepping down from his chariot, "your eyes are bright though you own nothing. I have a palace full of treasures, yet my heart often feels restless. Tell me, what makes your peace so deep?" The sage bowed his head slightly. "Majesty, peace comes not from what we hold, but from what we can put down." The king frowned thoughtfully. "But surely some possessions bring happiness, a home, fine food, loyal servants." The sage looked at the open sky. "Majesty, when a bird rests on a branch, it enjoys the shade but never claims the tree. When the branch breaks, it flies on. The bird is happy not because the branch is strong, but because its wings are free." The king was silent. Then, moved by admiration, he said, "Let me offer you something. You are wise and humble. Take these jewels as a gift. Use them to build a temple or feed the poor." He gestured to a servant, who brought forward a chest heavy with gold and gems. The sage gazed at the glittering stones, their light flashing in the sun. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, gently, he pushed the chest toward the king. "Your Majesty," he said, "if I took these, I would spend the rest of my life guarding them. They would demand my sleep, my time, my worry. I would trade peace for fear. The poor can be fed by your generosity far better than by my burden," the king insisted. "But you could do so much good with these riches." The sage smiled softly. "If water fills the ocean, it stays still. If it floods the house, it destroys. Wealth in the hands of wisdom can serve. But for me, Even a handful is more than I need. I carry no temple but this body, no treasure but contentment." He lifted his bowl and looked into its empty curve. "This emptiness is my teacher," he said. "It always has room for what is given, but it clings to nothing. Can a bowl already full receive anything new?" The king stood quietly, moved. "Then tell me, how may one like me, surrounded by comfort, find what you have?" The sage's eyes softened. "Begin by seeing what you already have. When gratitude ripens, desire fades. Try giving something away that you do not need. A jewel, a word of kindness, a piece of pride. Each act of letting go lightens the heart. And when the heart is light, it becomes a home for joy." The king bowed deeply. "You have shown me a truth no gold could buy," he said. "From this day, I will learn to need less." Years later, the sage's story spread through the land. People spoke of the holy man who refused a king's treasure and yet left the king richer. But the sage himself continued his wandering, untroubled by fame or memory. One evening, a disciple asked him, "Master, do you ever feel poor?" The sage smiled. "Poor? I am rich in everything that matters. The earth feeds me, the sky shelters me, the river sings to me, and every breath renews me. What more wealth could I seek?" The disciple bowed. "Then why do so many chase after more?" "Because they have forgotten how little it takes to be alive," the sage replied. "The mind that always wants is like a cup with a crack. No matter how much you pour, it never fills. The mind that knows enough is like a lake, calm, clear, reflecting the sky." He looked at the stars beginning to rise. Each one shines without competing. That is contentment, to glow from within, needing no applause. This story reminds us that happiness is not found in accumulation but in release. To have everything and still want more is a kind of poverty. To have little and feel complete is true abundance. The Buddha once said, "Contentment is the highest wealth." The art of living well is not to gather endlessly but to learn when to stop, to say, "This is enough." When we do, the noise of craving softens, and what remains is a quiet gratitude that no fortune can match. Reflection, practice. Today, try living simply in one small way. Eat one meal without excess. Clear one space of clutter. Turn off one unnecessary distraction. As you do, notice the lightness that follows. Feel how peace expands when wanting shrinks. That space, open, calm, and free, is the treasure the sage carried, and it has always been within you. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Story 21. The delicious soup and the birds dropping. To live in the world without being stained by it, that is true purity. Once, in a peaceful monastery surrounded by rice fields, a kind abbot was famous for his compassion. People came from far away to hear his teachings, and the monks under his care admired his calm, steady presence. Among them was a young monk named 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻, bright and sincere but still struggling with the noise of the world. One day, the villagers brought a basket of fresh vegetables, and 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 volunteered to cook for the community. He spent the entire morning preparing the meal, washing, chopping, stirring. He wanted everything to be perfect for the abbot's lunch. When the meal was finally ready, the aroma of the soup filled the kitchen, fragrant with herbs and rice, simple yet comforting. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 carried the steaming bowl to the abbot's quarters with great pride. As he crossed the courtyard, a bird swooped down from the temple roof. In that instant, a small drop of waste fell from its wings, landing squarely in the soup. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 froze, horrified. The soup that had taken hours was ruined in a second. He wanted to cry. He looked around. No one had seen. For a moment, he thought, maybe I can scoop it out. The abbot will never know. But something inside whispered, would you feed impurity to one who teaches purity? So he turned back to the kitchen, threw the soup away, and began again, though the sun was already high and sweat dripped down his face. When the abbot came to eat, he noticed the younger monk's exhaustion. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻, he said gently, why are your eyes red? 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 told him what had happened, expecting scolding for wasting time and food. But the abbot only smiled. You did well, he said. Better to lose a pot of soup than to feed the body at the cost of the heart. A single drop of impurity can turn sweetness bitter, not only in food, but in life. He paused and added, this is how the world is, too. There will always be something unpleasant mixed into what is good, a harsh word in a kind day, a bit of pain in a joyful heart. But do not despair. The task is not to run away from life's impurities, but to keep your own mind clean among them. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 bowed deeply. How can I keep it clean, Master, when the world feels so full of dust? The abbot replied, the sky holds both clouds and sunlight, yet neither stain it. The mind, when seen clearly, is like that sky. Let things pass through without clinging to them. Praise and blame, gain and loss, sweetness and sourness. That is how you live in the world without being trapped by it. Years later, 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 became a teacher himself. One evening, a young monk came to him in tears. Master, I cannot bear the people outside the temple. They lie, they cheat, they mock the robes. I wish I could hide here forever. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 handed him a bowl of soup. Taste this, he said. The monk sipped and smiled. It's perfect. Then 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 dropped a small leaf into it. And now? The monk frowned. It's still good. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 dropped another leaf, and then a third, until the young monk laughed. All right, Master. Enough. It's fine. I can just take out the leaves. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 nodded. Exactly. The world will always drop something into your piece, but the wise learn not to throw away the whole bowl every time that happens. The young monk understood, and his heart grew lighter. This story reminds us that purity is not fragile. It is not about avoiding what is unpleasant, but about seeing it clearly and not letting it define us. In life, there will always be bird droppings, mistakes, unkindness, disappointment. Yet if we keep our hearts spacious and clean, nothing outside can truly taint the peace within. The Buddha taught that to live in the world but remain unbound is the art of awakening. To see, to care, to act wisely, yet stay free from clinging. Reflection, practice. Today, when something upsets you, a rude comment, a small failure, a delay, pause and ask, what is my mind sticking to right now? Then, like removing a leaf from your soup, gently let it go. Purity is not in fleeing the world, but in staying open within it, calm, clear, and unstained. Story 22. The Buddha and Nanda. The path is not to escape life, but to understand it. Enlightenment is not found in heaven, but in freedom from suffering here and now. Nanda was a young man of noble birth, handsome and admired by all. He had everything: wealth, servants, a beautiful wife who adored him. Yet when his brother, the Buddha, returned to their city to teach, Nanda felt torn. He loved comfort, but he also felt a quiet emptiness he could not name. Out of respect for his brother, he attended a sermon at the monastery. The Buddha spoke gently about impermanence, how youth fades, beauty passes, and all possessions eventually return to dust. Each word struck Nanda's heart like a bell. Later, when the Buddha invited him to stay for a few days of reflection, Nanda agreed. But as soon as he donned the monk's robe, his mind wandered constantly to his wife. Her voice, her laughter, her eyes waiting at home, the desire burned in him like fire. Seeing his restlessness, the Buddha said, "Come, Nanda, let us walk." He led him to a quiet grove where birds sang softly. With his great power of vision, the Buddha showed Nanda a heavenly scene, celestial beings radiant and serene, their beauty surpassing anything on earth. "Do you see them?" the Buddha asked. "Yes," Nanda whispered, awed. "Among them lives one whose beauty equals your beloved's 1,000-fold," the Buddha said. "If you practice with diligence and free your mind from craving, you may be reborn among them." The promise stirred Nanda's ambition. He began meditating earnestly, eager for heavenly reward. But as days passed, his heart grew still. The fever of desire began to cool. He saw that his striving, even for heaven, was another form of attachment. One evening, the Buddha asked, "Nanda, why do you meditate?" "To reach heaven, Lord," Nanda replied honestly. The Buddha smiled. "And when heaven ends, what then? You will fall again into sorrow. True peace is not in chasing pleasure, but in ending the chase." Those words pierced his heart. Nanda sat long into the night, watching his mind's movements, wanting, grasping, fearing. At dawn, he understood. The prison was not the world outside, but the clinging within. From that day, Nanda practiced not to escape life, but to understand it. He served the sick, cleaned the temple floors, and meditated on compassion. Gradually, joy replaced desire, his eyes grew calm, and his heart became light as air. When he finally attained awakening, he bowed before the Buddha and said, "Now I see, the path is not to run from the world, but to walk through it with wisdom. Liberation is not in distance, but in understanding." This story teaches that true spirituality is not an escape from human life, but a deep meeting with it. We do not meditate to fly away to another realm, but to awaken where we stand, in the middle of work, love, loss, and change. The Buddha's compassion is not found above the clouds, but in the heart that stops clinging and begins to see clearly. Reflection. Practice. Sit quietly for 5 minutes. Feel your breath as it moves in and out. Notice thoughts rise and fade, desires, worries, dreams. Do not chase or resist them, just see. Then, send a gentle wish into the world. May all beings be free from suffering. May all hearts find peace. This is the heart of awakening, not escape, but understanding. Not heaven, elsewhere, but freedom, here and now. Conclusion. What began with small acts of giving now unfolds into the spaciousness of freedom. Each story, from a humble seed of kindness to the deep understanding of impermanence, has pointed toward one truth. When we give, we begin to see. When we see, we begin to love. And when we love, peace naturally follows. These tales were never about others. They were mirrors, gentle and clear, showing you your own heart. Through them, perhaps you have glimpsed that the path is not something to build or add, but to uncover. Practice is not about becoming someone new. It is about seeing what is already here. When we truly see, suffering begins to dissolve. When we truly understand, compassion arises. When we truly love, letting go comes naturally. If this Dharma story has brought even a little light to your heart, share it with someone who may be walking through darkness. Every time we ease another's burden, we take one step closer to peace ourselves. May you rest tonight in the quiet, knowing that nothing is missing, that peace was never lost, only waiting to be seen. May all beings be safe, gentle, and free.